Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. Okay, a lot different. You're not a noble, you're not a knight, you're not even a scribe with bad handwriting and decent shoes. No, tonight you are something much rougher, grittier, and closer to the gutter than glory. You're a medieval street vendor. And yeah, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your city and time in the comments. I always love seeing where and when you're watching from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your body wakes you before the sun even bothers peeking over the crooked rooftops. It's not an elegant kind of waking, no cosy duvet or chirping birds. It's more of a groan and a shuffle, bones creaking like the wooden floor beneath you, which, by the way, isn't even your own. You're sleeping above a pigsty, not a metaphorical one. An actual pigsty. The landlord thought it was a fair compromise for a tenant who pays in scraps and silver shavings. It's not much, but at least the pigs radiate some warmth on cold nights. Your breath fogs in front of you, even indoors. The air smells like boiled cabbage, wet hay, and the sour tang of unwashed humanity. Your fingers are already stiff, a mild frostbite from that brief nap you tried to call a night's sleep. You sit up slowly, wrapping your tattered wool cloak around your shoulders. It's so full of holes it might qualify as netting. And it itches. Of course it itches. You rummage through your sack of goods, today's inventory. Not much. A half-wheel of questionable cheese, a basket of apples with more bruises than skin, and 6 loaves of bread from 2 days ago. You give one a cautious sniff. It growls back. Still sellable, you decide. Your standards aren't high. You're not feeding royalty. You're feeding the desperate. The city's streets are still dark when you push out your creaking door. The air outside hits your lungs like a punch, cold and rank. The gutters haven't been cleared, and the combination of rot, horse droppings, and last night's chamber pot toss-outs creates a perfume you're unfortunately used to. You dodge a splash of something best left unidentified as you head into the warren of alleys that lead to the market square. Even in this gloom, you're not alone. Others like you are already setting up. Those early birds who sleep with one eye open and one hand on their coin pouch. A fish seller you vaguely know, his name might be Arnulf, trundles past with a cart that smells like Poseidon died in it. You nod to him, but he doesn't nod back. The competition has no time for pleasantries. A few rats skitter past your boots, fat and bold. You envy their confidence. They live well here. City rats in the 1300s are nothing like the shy mice in storybooks. These ones will bite your toe if they think it's made of meat. You reach the edge of the square and stake out your usual spot. Third wall from the tannery, just before the crooked post with the hanging sign that used to say blacksmith, but now says nothing because someone stole the letters for firewood. You lay out your goods on a board balanced between 2 barrels that once held pickled herring. The smell never left. The cold seeps through your shoes, one with a hole the size of a pomegranate, and you start rubbing your hands together for warmth. You mumble your sales pitch under your breath, rehearsing. Fresh cheese, apples, loaves for a copper, then louder. Fresh cheese, apples, loaves for a... And already a voice next to you starts shouting louder. It's the spice seller. He's barely taller than a sack of flour, but has a voice like a cathedral bell. You glare at him. He grins back, gold tooth catching the rising light like it's laughing at you. Now the sun decides to drag itself over the horizon like a drunk noble late to confession. Light spills into the square, illuminating the growing chaos. Carts rattle in, children dart between legs, and a pair of beggars begin arguing over a chicken bone near the fountain. You're still cold, still tired, still hungry, but this is the job. This is the life. Your hands shake slightly as you unwrap the cheese wheel. Not from cold anymore, but from knowing this is all the inventory you've got for the day. If it doesn't sell, you don't eat tonight. Again. And no, the pigs do not share. Let's pause for a second here and be honest. Medieval street vending is not some rustic, Instagrammable cottagecore fantasy. It's rough. You don't get a stall unless you're licensed by a guild, and guess who can't afford guild dues? You. You've been fined twice this month for selling off-pitch, meaning you were standing 3 paces too far to the left. The bailiff who fined you couldn't even read the lines drawn in the mud, but he could count your coins just fine. And let's not forget, you're working under one of the most rigid social systems in European history. You're not a serf tied to land. But you're not free either. You're in that delicious middle layer known as town poor. Basically, too free to be owned, too poor to be missed. A cool historical side note here. Many street vendors were women, especially those selling dairy, herbs, or ale. These women often faced harassment but carved out micro-economies of power. Some even became minor local celebrities. Of course, that didn't protect them from being accused of witchcraft if business was too good. Back to your day. You've now been standing in one place for an hour, yelling yourself hoarse, and so far you've sold one apple to a child, who paid with a button and ran away laughing. Your stomach gurgles loud enough to attract glances. You ignore it and glance up at the sky instead. Grey clouds, definitely rain coming. You mutter a quick prayer to St. Homobonis, patron saint of merchants. It's unclear if he's listening. There's some scholarly debate about how much autonomy street vendors actually had. Were they just tolerated by city officials or secretly vital to urban economies? Evidence suggests both. You're the human glue between harvest and hunger, but you're treated more like the grime between cobblestones. A distant church bell tolls. It's not even mid-morning yet. Your feet already hurt. Your eyes burn and your cheese is beginning to sweat. Welcome to the start of another glorious medieval day. The square is no longer yours. It belongs to the noise. The roar of morning builds around you until it's less of a sound and more of a pressure, like someone placed a pot over your head and started pounding the sides with a stick. Cartwheels thud over cobbles, oxen bellow, dogs bark. A lute player with only 3 strings strums furiously like he's auditioning for royalty. And through all of it, cutting like a knife come the hawkers, the other street vendors. Fresh trout still twitching. Fine ribbons for your lady, only slightly blood-stained. Hot eel pie, don't ask what's in it. You throw your own voice into the fray, something between a yell and a prayer. Bread, apples, cheese, good enough for your worst enemy. That gets a smirk from a woman walking past with a baby strapped to her chest and an armful of cabbages. She doesn't stop. There's no room for subtlety here. No display aesthetics, no ambience. Your cart, if you're lucky enough to have one, is really just a wheelbarrow that once belonged to a gravedigger. Most people lay their goods on sacks, crates, or whatever part of the ground isn't already claimed by chicken droppings or spilled mead. You have a plank. That plank is your entire empire. The day really kicks off when the breadwoman arrives. Her voice pierces the air like a blade. High, shrill, impossible to ignore. You don't know her name, but everyone calls her Hagmouth, mostly behind her back. She could outsell you blindfolded and gagged. She's got a rhythm. Shout, gesture, wink. Toss a crust to a beggar. She's marketing and mercy in one grimy bundle. You try not to hate her. Not too far off, the fish sellers are pouring seawater over their catch to keep it fresh. One dumps a bucket too close to your stall and a suspicious wet slick creeps toward your bread like an advancing army. You shift the loaves back just in time. The bread's dry, but your boots aren't. Your right sock squelches. Wonderful. Today is starting better than yesterday at least. Yesterday a cart full of onions tipped over and people trampled you trying to grab them. You lost 2 apples and part of your dignity. A goat stole your rag. You didn't know goats could smirk. You're getting jostled from all sides now. The square is packed. This is your window, the couple hours after sunup when people are most likely to buy. They want breakfast or they're prepping for the day's meals. You eyeball the pair of monks haggling over dried figs. Nobles don't shop in places like this, unless they're slumming it for fun or on some saintly humility tour. A woman in a cloak approaches your stand. You snap into focus. She's got that wary, calculating look. Probably a cook for a middling household. Not rich, not poor. She pokes your cheese with a wooden stick. How old? You lie so easily it almost feels honest. Fresh this morning, she snorts. From which animal? You shrug. One with udders. She rolls her eyes but hands over a coin. You wrap the cheese chunk in a scrap of linen and thank her. Your first real sale of the day. It feels like victory. Small, mouldy victory. But you're only as good as your next sale. And right now, a shouting match is erupting between the honey seller and a tanner. The tanner claims beeswax candles are stealing his trade. The honeyman calls him a leather-sniffing troglodyte. You take a half step back just in case someone throws something. It's a reminder of a brutal truth. This market runs on chaos, and you have to navigate it with the grace of a drunk juggler. You're not just a vendor, you're a survivalist. Every other person in this square is a potential rival, or worse, a thief. You keep one hand on your coin pouch at all times. It's not paranoia, it's muscle memory. One historical nugget you might not expect. Many medieval cities had actual regulations about street vending, not necessarily to help you, but to control you. Some cities had designated days for certain sellers, strict bans on selling spoiled goods, or specific spots for trades like fishmongers and butchers. Break those rules, and you risk fines, lashes, or worse, losing your spot permanently. That's like losing your lungs. A city official strolls by now, his tunic so clean it practically glows. He's got a wax tablet and an expression like he smells something offensive, and it's probably you. You keep your head down. He checks stalls randomly, weighs goods, accuses people of cheating. He once fined a man for selling immodest turnips. No one's sure what that meant. Today he doesn't stop. You let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. Then, from somewhere behind you, a crash. Glass shatters, screaming, not panicked, just annoyed. A spice seller's crate has tipped over, and the precious little bottles are now decorating the cobblestones. You watch as he tries to salvage a tiny jar of saffron with the desperation of a man trying to catch his own spilled blood. Saffron, by the way, is more expensive than your entire inventory. You couldn't afford a smell of it. Still, you respect the hustle. You reposition your apples. You count your bread again, still 5 loaves left. If you can move 2 more before noon, you might get a hot meal tonight. If you sell all 5, you might even afford meat. Not cow, of course, not even goat, probably pigeon, possibly rat disguised as pigeon. You've learnt not to ask too many questions. A customer approaches, rubbing his belly. He's got the look of someone who gambled half his breakfast money at dice, and is now regretting it. You smile like you've got the food of kings. Bread's warm, you lie again. He shrugs, tosses you a coin and bites in. His face doesn't light up, but he doesn't spit it out either. That's a win. There's an ongoing scholarly debate about how much freedom vendors like you had to move between towns. Some say you were stuck in one place, dependent on community goodwill and local lords. Others argue itinerant sellers roamed from village to village, creating a kind of underground economy. You like to think about moving, but the idea of starting over somewhere else, with no contacts and no plank to claim, feels more like fantasy than possibility. By mid-morning, the light turns yellow and harsh, the crowds begin to thin. Carts creak out of the square. Hagmouth starts packing up her unsold loaves. You count your coin pouch, 3 coppers and a bent iron piece that might be a token or just trash. Not bad, not good, but not bad. You sit down on your upturned crate and stretch your legs. The square is littered with straw, onion peels and a crushed pear slowly attracting wasps. Your stomach growls again. It's going to be a long day. There's no real break in your day. No lunch hour, no shaded bench where you can sip ale and admire your hard work. You're still planted on your crate, boots damp and spine aching, watching the chaos around you begin to shift. The early rush is over, but the market doesn't sleep. It simply changes mood, trading frenzy for something slower, more predatory. Fewer customers now, but the ones who come are pickier, stingier, and far more interested in haggling you into poverty. You shift your weight and rub your knees. They creak like old door hinges. You're in your 20s, maybe. It's hard to tell anymore. Sun, wind, smoke, and stress have aged your face into something that could pass for mid-40s on a bad day, and they're all bad days. Somewhere nearby, a man is yelling about the price of eggs. His pitch includes words like daylight robbery and I'd rather eat rocks. He's bargaining like his life depends on it, and maybe it does. You don't flinch. You've had that exact argument more times than you can count, usually ending with someone storming off or tossing the food on the ground. You stare at your apples. 3 left now. The bruises are spreading like gossip. Soon they'll be worthless. You pluck one up, polish it against your sleeve and hold it higher when someone passes, smiling like it's a ruby. Only a copper, good for your teeth and your soul. No takers. Then comes the space struggle. Vendors who sold out early or just gave up start dragging their carts away. The empty spots don't stay empty for long. Within minutes, a knife sharpener wheels into one. His contraption squeals as he sets up, spinning his stone and shouting offers. Sparks flicker. Children gather to stare. You eye his cart with a mixture of envy and suspicion. A wheel sharpener is dangerous, not just because of the blades, but because of what he represents. A mobile trade, one that takes no stall, no fixed corner. He could be here today and gone tomorrow and still make a week's worth of coin. You, meanwhile, are a hostage to your plank and that crumbling wall behind you. Then it happens. Someone bumps into your board. Your apples tumble. One hits the cobbles, rolls toward a puddle, and is promptly trodden on by a passing mule. You lunge to grab the other two before they meet the same fate. The customer who caused the collision? Already vanished into the crowd. No apology, no coin. You curse under your breath and pick up the ruined apple. It's flattened on one side and smells faintly of mule. You set it behind your crate. Maybe you can pawn it off later as pig feed. You know a woman who'll buy it, if the rats don't get to it first. You're angry, but you don't have the luxury of staying that way. Every second you're not selling is another lost meal. You've seen what happens to vendors who lose too many days in a row. They vanish. No one asks where they went. Maybe they moved. Maybe they starved. Maybe they got tossed into the river with a rock tied to their belt. Not your business, and certainly not your future, if you can help it. The smells are thickening again. Midday sun plus exposed food equals a festival of rot. The fish stands are the worst offenders. You swear one of them is actively fermenting something alive. A breeze kicks up, dragging with it the sour note of urine, sweat and overripe plums. Someone downwind is cooking something that used to be meat, but is now closer to soup, boiling in a blackened pot over a fire set in a ring of stolen bricks. You hear the cook shout, "Only 1 copper! Best stew in the street!" You believe him. It probably is the best, which says nothing good about the competition. A historical note here, street food in medieval cities was shockingly common. People didn't always have kitchens or access to firewood, so they relied on cooked food vendors, soup sellers, pie bakers, meat spit masters. Many vendors made their living just heating things up for others. Think of it like medieval Uber Eats, but with more smoke and fewer options. Back to your plank. A man wearing a feathered hat stops in front of your stall. His boots are polished, his gloves soft, and his gaze condescending. He holds up a loaf. "How much?" You tell him. He laughs. "For this?" You nod. He sets the loaf down and walks away, calling over his shoulder, "You should pay me to take it!" You smile through clenched teeth. Deep breath. Don't scream. Don't throw the bread at his head. Save that for the dreams. Behind you, someone else has claimed part of your wall. A boy no more than 10 is selling what looks like feathers and bits of string. His shirt is too big, clearly his father's, and his shoes don't match. He's got the 1,000-yard stare of someone who hasn't eaten in days. You should tell him to shove off. He's cutting into your space. But instead, you give him a nod. He nods back. There's a quiet truce among the poor. The streets will eat you fast enough without turning on each other. The boy's got spunk, though. He shouts louder than most adults and even does a little dance. You almost want to give him a crust. Almost. The square is thinning again. It's mid-afternoon now, and the sun is at its cruelest. Your mouth is dry. You rationed your water, but it's warm and tastes like the barrel it came from. You sip it slowly anyway, then tuck it back beneath your stall. Another customer approaches, a hunched old woman with a cane and eyes like storm clouds. She inspects your apples, sniffs your bread, pokes your cheese, then she just stands there, waiting. You wait too. Finally she says, "Too expensive." You wait some more. She doesn't budge. You lower the price slightly. She sighs like you just made her carry a mule up a mountain and finally hands over a coin. She leaves with a loaf, muttering curses. You're pretty sure one of them was directed at your entire lineage. There's an interesting fringe fact. Some street vendors hired criers or barkers to yell for them while they rested. Kids were often used, paid in crusts or scraps. Some barkers became so loud and charismatic that they earned reputations across cities. You've never hired one, but maybe someday. If you ever have more than 5 loaves to your name, you lean back again, exhausted. You count your coins. Not enough. Never enough. But at least you made it through the rush. Your stock is lower, your voice is hoarse, and your body feels like it lost a fight with a donkey cart. 1 more hour, you think, just 1 more hour, maybe a miracle will happen. But this is medieval street vending. Miracles are for saints. The sun's begun its slow crawl westward, but your day is far from done. The streets hum at a different frequency now. Less of a roar, more of a mutter. Afternoon in the market is a strange middle zone. The crowds are thinner, the air is hotter, and everyone's mood has started to rot just like the fruit. It's the time when tempers run short, feet get sore, and your patience is hanging by a thread so thin it makes spider silk look like rope. You shift on your crate again, trying to coax blood back into your legs. Your knees crack loudly. No one notices, or if they do, they don't care. The crowd's attention is mostly turned toward the well in the square, where a woman just slipped on an onion skin and landed squarely in a puddle. A group of children explodes into laughter. The woman gets up slowly, curses like a sailor, and keeps walking with dignity utterly destroyed but posture stubbornly upright. You admire her resilience. You've only got 2 loaves and 1 apple left now. The cheese is gone. You sold the last of it to a baker's apprentice who paid half in coin and half in hot gossip. Apparently, the town bailiff's wife has been secretly buying her meat from a rival butcher across town. Scandalous! Not particularly useful to you, but in the gossip economy, knowledge is currency, and you're always collecting. A scholarly tidbit worth dropping here. While medieval economies ran on silver and grain, they also thrived on whispered conversations. Deals weren't made purely on price, they were forged through rumour, reputation and good old-fashioned social leverage. A smart vendor knew when to talk, when to listen, and when to look like they'd heard nothing at all. You, of course, are a master of all 3. Your head jerks up as you hear a scuffle nearby. 2 vendors are going at it, an herb seller and a poultryman. From the sound of it, someone accused someone else of throwing wilted parsley into a basket of live chicks. It's unclear whether that's true or what that even accomplishes, but fists are flying now. You watch from your post half interested. A few market guards meander over eventually, breaking it up with the kind of energy reserved for very tired people who don't get paid enough to care. You glance at the 2 remaining loaves on your plank. One has begun to cave in slightly, more stale than sturdy. The apple is losing its blush, its skin softening. You mentally slash your prices, 1 copper for both. You'll pretend it's a closing special. Just then a shadow looms. A tall, wiry man with a travelling pack and a sword at his hip stops in front of you. His face is sun-browned and travel-worn, the kind that tells stories without needing words. You straighten up. "Afternoon," he says. "Anything still edible?" You resist the urge to laugh. You point to the loaves and apple. Bread's got personality. Apple's shy. He chuckles and flips you a silver coin. You blink at it like it's a hallucination. That's worth more than your whole day's sales. "Keep the change," he says, already walking away with his bundle. "Wait," you call. "Why?" He glances back and says, "I grew up selling onions on the street. Never forgot how hard that is." Then he's gone. You stare at the coin in your palm. It feels like holding a tiny sun, real silver. You bite it out of habit. It hurts. That's a good sign. And just like that, your luck turns, for the moment. But you know better than to trust luck. She's a fickle mistress, often drunk and almost always laughing at you behind your back. Your stomach grumbles, louder this time. You allow yourself a sip of water and dig into your emergency crust hidden beneath your board. It's nearly fossilised, but you chew slowly, savouring each bite like it's a roast goose. You're not full, but you're not fainting either. That's the line you walk every day. Then the tax collector arrives. Not him, specifically, but his men. They don't wear uniforms, but you've got the look. Clean boots, smug smiles, and a long strip of parchment. One of them points in your direction. You tense. "Name?" he asks. You lie. Of course you do. You've got 3 names in rotation, and this is a good time for name number 2. He scans the list. "No permit on record." "I paid last week," you say smoothly. "Got a receipt?" You shrug. "He didn't give me one. Said the ink was low." He sighs, already bored. 1 copper for the pitch, 2 for the day. Fines 5 if you can't pay. You pull out 2 coins reluctantly. It burns worse than that crust you just gnawed through. He pockets them without checking. Another fun historical fact. Taxation in medieval markets was often code for bribes. Officials would invent infractions, demand payment and move on. It wasn't about justice. It was about quota. And you're just a line on a long scroll of victims. The man walks away. You glare at his back but say nothing. This isn't your first shakedown, and it won't be your last. Nearby, the rag seller starts packing up. She's done for the day. You catch her eye, and she flashes a toothless grin. "Still breathing?" she croaks. "Barely," you call back. "Then you're ahead." That's the game. Survival is victory. Profit is fantasy. The dream of a stall with a real roof and a sign with your name painted in proper ink? That's a bedtime story. You tell it to yourself sometimes. On cold nights, like a lullaby you don't believe in but hum anyway. There's one more customer today. A teenage girl with a sack of onions and eyes sharp as razors. She asks how much for the apple. You say half a copper. She says too much. You say make an offer. She tosses you a boiled sweet in wax paper and grabs the apple. You let her. You haven't had sugar in months. The sweet is sticky, melted slightly in the heat. You pop it into your mouth and let the slow drip of sugar dissolve the sour taste of the day. It's glorious. There's an ongoing scholarly argument about whether street vendors lived hand-to-mouth because of external oppression, taxes, guild monopolies, or whether their own lack of resources made upward movement impossible. It's a chicken and egg debate. You just know the egg's probably rotten and the chicken got stolen last week. The sun dips lower. Shadows stretch long. You pack up your empty basket, tuck your coin pouch deep into your coat and lift your board onto your shoulder. Your feet scream with every step, your back protests and your shoulders burn. But you walk. Back through the alleys, past the barking dogs, the shouting neighbours, the hungry-eyed children, back to your room above the pigsty. The pigs snort as you arrive, as if mocking you. You sit on your mat, stretch your aching legs and count your coins again. Not much. But that silver piece, that's something. Maybe tomorrow you'll buy extra apples. Maybe even 2 cheese wheels. Maybe. You chew the last of the sweet, stare at the wall and let the silence settle in. You survive the day. Barely. The next morning hits like a slap, not a whisper. There's no gentle sunbeam gliding across your cheek, no bird chirping at your windowsill. What you get instead is the sound of someone vomiting violently into the alley just outside your door, or possibly through your door. It's hard to tell with the thin walls and the fact that your front step doubles as the street's favourite public latrine. You groan and sit up slowly. The stiffness in your joints makes you wonder if you slept on a stone. You glance at your bed, a mat stuffed with old straw and hay that smells suspiciously like mildew and something stronger. Maybe pig urine. No, definitely pig urine. The pigs beneath your floor are already rustling, grunting in their cheerful, oblivious way. Pigs don't know what taxes are. Pigs don't get fined for being 3 paces off from their selling pitch. You rub your eyes, scratch at a flea bite on your collarbone, and reach for your coat. It's still damp from yesterday's sweat and fishy splashback, but it's all you've got. The day waits for no one, and certainly not for vendors without stall licenses. Your inventory is sadder than usual. Yesterday's windfall, that silver coin from the onion boy turned mercenary, was more than luck. It was survival money. But even after buying a few slightly better apples, a crustier cheese wheel, and a piece of meat that may or may not have once barked, most of it's already gone. The real killers aren't the food costs, though. It's the hidden tolls, street access fees, unofficial protection costs, and the bribes you've got to pay just to keep your plank at the same place day after day. You drag your wares down to the square again, boots thudding against the cobblestones like a slow death march. The city is waking up now. Smoke curls from cook fires, bells toll faintly from some chapel you'll never step foot inside, and the smells, well, they're the same as yesterday, only hotter. At the square you find your spot's been taken. By a cart filled with garlic and onions. A proper cart too. Wooden slats, spoked wheels, and a printed sign that reads Albin's Aromatics. The man behind it, presumably Albin, looks like he's never missed a meal in his life. He's got a padded vest and a beard that's more oiled than your frying pan. You say nothing at first. Maybe you can squeeze into the corner, wedge your plank near the wall again. But Albin notices you hovering. "This pitch is mine now," he says with a smugness that could sink ships. "I've been here all week," you reply, not exactly threatening, but not apologetic either. "Yeah, got a permit?" he asks. You don't, you never have. But the guards usually look the other way as long as you pay your fees. You say nothing. Albin smirks. "Didn't think so." You retreat 2 paces, scanning for another gap in the market. Nothing. Every good spot is claimed. You'll have to sell from a side alley again, where the foot traffic is sparse and the shadows longer. It means fewer eyes on your goods and more rats nosing around. You walk to the alley's edge, set down your board between 2 crates of dried beans and a man selling boots that look suspiciously blood-stained. He gives you a polite nod, then spits into the gutter. Your day begins. Hours crawl. Customers come in drips. Some look, fewer buy. One man haggles over an apple for so long you consider offering to just let him smell it and leave. He walks away muttering something about price gouging. Your stomach snarls with hunger. You try to ignore it, busying yourself rearranging your cheese, flipping it to hide the sweating parts. You swat away flies. You swat away a kid trying to swipe an apple. You swat away a pigeon that landed on your plank and pooped without shame. This is your kingdom, and it is crap. Now, guilds. Let's talk guilds. They're supposed to protect tradesmen, set fair prices, maintain standards, train apprentices, but they mostly just gatekeep. If you're not in one, you're invisible. Worse, you're illegal. Bakers, cobblers, even candle makers have guilds, but street vendors? You're guildless and therefore worthless in their eyes. You exist in the margins, useful only when they want to blame someone for spreading disease or driving down prices. And that's the kicker. Your prices are already rock bottom. You're not undercutting out of greed. You're undercutting because you'd rather sell your last apple for half a coin than let it rot in your hands. You shift on your crate watching Albin across the square. His customers keep coming. He's got garlic braided into fancy little loops and onions stacked like golden jewels. He's chatting, smiling, occasionally throwing in a clove on the house. You don't need to sell fancy garlic. You'd just like to not starve. A woman finally approaches. She's older, with a face like a knotted root and fingers stained with dye. She points at your cheese. How much for the whole wheel? You blink. 3 coppers, she grimaces. I'll give you 1. It's worth 2, you try, aiming for a compromise that doesn't make you feel like you're being mugged. 1 and a crust, she offers, pulling something out of her satchel. It's stale, but you're starving. You nod. She leaves with the cheese. You pocket the coin, and then you eat the crust slowly, like a condemned man savouring his last meal. It's dry and sandy in your mouth, but the chewing gives you something to focus on that isn't rage or envy or the grinding feeling of being stepped on by life. A quirky footnote here. Some vendors, especially in London and Paris, would create elaborate chants to draw attention. Not just shouting fresh fish, but rhyming jingles, almost like medieval advertising jingles. Some became so famous their chants were recorded in plays and poetry. You tried one once, but someone threw a turnip at your head. You're halfway through the crust when a rat darts past your stall dragging something you hope isn't meat. You chase it off with your boot, scaring away a potential customer in the process. It's always something. There's no security here, no safety net. One bad week and you're begging. One injury and you're dead. One cart parked in your spot and you might not eat for 2 days. You live between the cracks in the stone, hoping no one notices long enough to step on you. Later in the afternoon, a guard walks through the alley. You tense. He's just passing through this time, not collecting bribes or evicting anyone. He nods at the blood boot man. Maybe they're friends. Maybe they're brothers. Or maybe they both like boots and blood. You don't ask. By sunset, you've sold 2 apples, half your bread and a sliver of your dignity. You pack up quietly, aching and hollow. You trudge home past the pigs through the door onto the mat, and you lie there staring at the ceiling, thinking about garlic braids and silver coins and all the ways today tried to crush you. You're still breathing. Barely. Rain. Of course it's raining, not a gentle drizzle either. This is the kind of rain that feels personal, like the sky just remembered it owes you a beating and decided to pay up all at once. You wake up to the sound of it hammering your roof, or rather, the collection of warped boards and soggy cloth you call a roof. There's a new leak. You roll slightly and find your shoulder soaked. Fantastic. The pigs below are having the time of their lives. They grunt, snort and splash in their own filth with joyous abandon. You try not to envy their enthusiasm or their diet. You sit up, bones sore, stomach hollow, and stare at the puddle that's begun to form next to your mat. It's not the worst thing you've ever woken up to, but it's in the top 10. Your coat is still damp from yesterday, and your boots haven't dried since last week. You step into them anyway. It's either that or walk barefoot through sludge and animal muck. You grab your plank, your basket, and what little remains of yesterday's stock, some hardening bread, 2 shriveled apples, and what might be a turnip or a fossil. You brace yourself and step outside. The streets have turned to rivers. Not babbling brooks or picturesque streams. These are ankle-deep oily torrents that carry leaves, rat corpses, and mystery solids you don't want to identify. The rain slaps your face as you trudge through it, your board on one shoulder and your basket in the crook of your arm. As you make your way toward the market, your already low hopes sink lower. Nobody shops in weather like this. Even the desperate have limits. The few people you pass are hunched under cloaks or barrels or, in one case, a repurposed meat rack. You nod at them, fellow survivors of the medieval monsoon. When you reach the square, it's a ghost town. Half the stalls are abandoned. The ones that remain are covered with tarps or makeshift canopies. You spot Hagmouth under a patched sailcloth, still shouting about her loaves like a banshee in a thunderstorm. That woman would sell bread in a war zone. You don't know whether to admire her or fear her. Your usual spot is, of course, taken, again. This time by a man selling pickled eels, who has ingeniously turned a broken umbrella into a dripping sails roof. You find a corner beneath the eaves of a leaning building where the water flows only intermittently. You lay out your goods on the plank now slick with rain. The bread sags. The apples look like they've been crying. You shout anyway. Apples, bread, great for wet days like this. No one answers. You shout again, voice straining over the din of the rain. A dog walks past and sneezes at you. The rain isn't just annoying, it's lethal for business. No one's out long enough to shop, and those who are dart from stall to stall like frightened birds, trying to get what they need before the weather drowns them. You have to shout louder just to be noticed, but with every yell your throat burns. Eventually you stop yelling. You just stand there, soaked, cold, and slowly being forgotten by the world. Historically, rain was a market killer in every sense. Poor drainage meant most streets flooded instantly. Vendors lost whole days of sales and with them meals. There were no rain checks, no weather protections, no insurance. Your goods got wet. Tough. Your pitch flooded. Too bad. And God help you if mould got into your stock. Mould didn't just ruin a wheel of cheese, it ruined your week. You pull your cloak tighter around you, but the water finds ways in. Always. Down your collar, into your sleeves. Even your underwear feels like it's been for a swim. You wonder if it's possible to drown from the outside in. A customer finally approaches, a hunched figure under a dripping hood. You can't even see their face, just a pale hand emerging from the folds of their cloak. It points at your bread. 2 for 1, the voice croaks. You nod. Anything, please. They toss you a coin and disappear as fast as they came, like a ghost doing bargain shopping. You clutch the coin like it's a holy relic. 1 sale. It's not much, but it means you're still in the game. Still here, still selling. Another hour passes. You shift from foot to foot, trying to keep the blood moving. Your fingers have turned purple and numb. You hold one up to your lips and blow on it, but it does little. You stop feeling the cold after a while. That's always a bad sign. There's a debate among scholars about how resilient medieval lower classes really were in the face of weather, especially vendors. Some argue people were tougher, more adaptable. Others point out the high mortality rates and chronic illnesses from prolonged exposure to elements. Judging by the shaking in your bones right now, you're siding with Team Not So Resilient. Just when you're considering packing up early, a boy runs past. Barefoot, soaked, holding what looks like a stolen pie. He's grinning like a lunatic. 2 guards chase after him, slipping in the mud, cursing with every step. You don't interfere. You don't even blink. This is market theatre now. The show always goes on, rain or shine. And then comes the real insult. A cart rolls in. It's covered with fine cloth protected by an actual canvas canopy and hauled by a pair of smug gleaming horses. The driver calls out cheerily, "Imported nuts, dry and delicious." He's dry, his goods are dry. His voice rings out like a church bell. People gather, people buy. You just stand there, water dripping off your nose, watching them hand over silver for almonds. You pack up slowly. Your fingers are too stiff to grip properly. You drop the plank once, and it splashes into the mud. You retrieve it with a sigh. No point cursing. The market doesn't care. The rain certainly doesn't. The walk home is longer, heavier. You're soaked through, breadless, hungry, and slightly dizzy. The alley near your room is a lake. You wade through it like a beaten pilgrim, open your door, and step into your wet, sad hovel. The pigs grunt in greeting. You collapse onto your mat, too tired to remove your boots. You close your eyes and try to forget what you're wearing, what you're feeling, and what tomorrow is likely to bring. But even in the dark, the rain keeps talking. Tap, tap, tap. And you listen, because that's all you can do. You wake to a sound that should never be heard first thing in the morning. Someone screaming about being cheated, and not the fun kind of cheating like dice or love, but the sort that involves actual violence and someone probably bleeding on a cabbage. It's still grey outside, but at least the rain has stopped. Mostly. The air hangs wet and thick like a wool blanket soaked in misery. You're already clammy before you even sit up. Your clothes are damp, not wet, just always damp now. The kind of damp that clings to your skin, crawls into your boots and sets up permanent residence in your socks. You're too tired to fight it, and anyway, you've got more pressing concerns, like selling what's left of your already dubious stock before it goes completely fungal. You pull on your boots, scrape the mud off your plank with the corner of an old spoon, and dig around for breakfast. There's half a turnip and a piece of bread that's gone so hard it could deflect arrows. You gnaw at it like a dog chewing wood, thinking about nothing in particular except the taste, which is somewhere between bark and ash. Outside, the city is already awake, because it never sleeps. Someone's hammering in the distance, someone else is yelling at a donkey, and the usual dawn stink wafts up from every alley. Smoke, sweat, garbage, and things best left unmentioned. A breeze carries the sharp tang of Tanner's piss from downwind. You pull your hood tighter and keep walking. As you approach the market, something feels off. There's more noise than usual, not the steady buzz of a working crowd, but something sharper, louder. You round the corner and see the source, 2 vendors, both regulars, are nose to nose, screaming. One's a spice merchant, the other a fruit seller. Between them lies a smashed basket of cherries, their red pulp staining the street like a battlefield wound. One of them just accused the other of watering down spice packets with sand. The other responded by hurling a plum. You sigh and step around the mess. Competition isn't just fierce out here, it's feral. There are too many mouths, too little space, and even less coin to go around. Every day is a battle for inches, of ground, of attention, of survival. And when margins are razor thin, people start looking for ways to slice deeper. You reach your usual spot. Miracle of miracles, it's actually empty today, and set up quickly before anyone else lays claim to it. A passing boy gives you the side eye, clearly assessing whether he could snag it. You glare until he backs off. You've got enough problems without wrestling for real estate. Your inventory is a sad joke. 2 loaves of bread that feel like bricks, 4 apples with suspicious soft spots, and a new item, yesterday's special, a wedge of meat pie you bought on discount from the alley baker who sells the things 1 day past safety. It smells okay if you don't breathe too deeply. Bread and apples, you yell. Pie, very little mould, I swear. When no one looks, you try again. Everything edible, mostly. A few glances now. One woman slows, then speeds up when she sees the pie. You sigh and lean against your wall. Then the man appears. You know the type instantly. Fancy boots cleaner than your soul. A cloak that costs more than your life. And beside him, his assistant or servant or whatever, some poor sap carrying a ledger and wearing the haunted expression of someone whose entire job is to listen and nod. Yes, the man says, pausing in front of you. Local vendor economy. Fascinating ecosystem. You blink. You weren't aware you were an ecosystem. He points at your apples. How much for one? Copper, you say without emotion. You know where this is going. He turns to his assistant. Note that. Apple, 1 copper, standard street rate. You hold out your hand. He doesn't take the apple. He walks away. You're left standing there, hand in midair, apple slowly bruising in your palm. There's an actual historical debate about whether upper-class people truly understood, or cared, about the economic pressure crushing vendors like you. Some scholars say city officials saw you as vital to commerce. Others say you were tolerated only so long as you didn't get in the way of the guilds. Judging by Cloakman, you're going with option 2. You go back to yelling, "Buy bread, beat someone with it if you don't eat it." That earns a chuckle from an older woman. She shuffles over, buys a loaf, and thanks you with a wink. Small victories, small coins, you pocket them both. A rat scurries across your foot, you jump. The woman laughs harder. Then a shout rings out. "Counterfeit weights!" You turn. 3 stalls down, a vendor's been caught using tampered scales. One side slightly hollowed to make the buyer think they're getting more than they are. A city inspector waves the scale overhead like it's a war trophy. The crowd murmurs. You watch with something between sympathy and irritation. The poor guy probably needed the coin. You've never used false weights yourself, but you've considered it. Often. Especially when the guards jack up the cleaning fee for the 3rd time in a week. Your stomach growls. You nibble a piece of bread. It crumbles like gravel. A pigeon watches from a rooftop. You glare at it. It glares back. A quirky fact. Pigeons weren't just flying nuisances. In some cities, they were protected as property of the local cathedral or lords. Hurting one could land you in the stocks, so you swallow your desire to hurl a rock at its smug little face. The wind picks up, blowing dust into your eyes. You blink rapidly and see another customer approaching, a young man with clean hands and too many rings. He holds out a coin. Apple. he says. Simple, direct. You hand one over, careful to choose the least squishy. He walks off, biting into it with a crunch that makes your mouth water. Your own apple stash is shrinking. That's good, but you know the reality. Once you're out, you're out. You can't sell dreams, you can't charm your way into someone's stomach. No stock means no coin, and no coin means hunger. Another vendor sidles up to you, a weasel-faced man who sells pickled onions and rumours. He leans in close. Word is, he whispers, the guild inspectors are cracking down tomorrow. Surprise checks, fines for anyone off book. You nod. He moves on. Your blood runs cold. You're always off book. You stare at your stall, your goods, your life. And you wonder, not for the first time, if tomorrow will be the day they finally shut you down for good. You don't sleep well, not because the pigs are louder than usual, they are, or because your mat has developed a new lump where there definitely didn't used to be one. No, what keeps you awake is the looming threat of the guild inspectors. You lie there, eyes open in the dark, counting the creaks of the wind against your warped shutters, and every one of them sounds like a booted foot about to kick your stall out from under you. The rats scurry above your ceiling boards now, probably building their own thriving market up there, trading stolen crumbs and chuckling at your misfortune. You think about moving. Again, a different street, a different square, even a different city. But then what? Start over? Fight some other pickled onion weasel for an alley spot? Get bullied by a new set of guards? There's no fresh start for people like you. There's only the same game, played on a new board with slightly different rules. By dawn, you've already packed what little you have and begun the walk to the square. No breakfast, just an ache in your belly and the metallic taste of dread. You arrive early, hoping to blend into the chaos before the inspectors appear. The market is still mostly empty, just the regulars setting up. You notice something at once. Hagmuth is missing. That's not normal. She never misses a day, not even when her cart lost a wheel and she dragged it half a mile on foot. You ask the old woman who sells fish guts for cat feed. She shrugs and mumbles something about fine too big to pay. Just like that, one of the loudest voices in the market is silenced. You choose your spot carefully, close to a side street, easy to flee if things go south. You lay out your plank and arrange your bread, your apples, and your sole wedge of softening cheese like it's royal banquet fare. Every item is legal, technically. Nothing spoiled, nothing underweight. But that's not the point. They'll find something if they want to. That's how the system works. You keep one eye on the main road, watching for men in uniform. Instead, what you see is something worse. Your rival, Marceau. Marceau is everything you're not. Tall, clean, with a cart he didn't build himself and a permanent smirk stitched onto his stupid, well-fed face. He strolls into the square like he owns it. And maybe he does. You heard a rumour he paid off someone in the guild to get a semi-official licence. Not a full one, but enough to keep the inspectors looking elsewhere. You wouldn't be surprised. He sets up 2 pitches away and immediately starts hawking in that sing-song voice of his that somehow manages to be both charming and grating. Bread fresh as sunrise, apples like love at first bite. You resist the urge to hurl your cheese at his head. A customer drifts toward you. She hesitates, eyeing your apples. You offer your best smile, the one that says, "I know this isn't pretty, but neither is your budget." She picks one up, sniffs it, and hands you a coin. You hand over the apple like it's made of gold. A good start. Then you see them. 3 men in blue tunics with stiff collars and sour faces. Guild inspectors. Their boots are too clean, and their hands never stop moving. One always writing, one always gesturing, one always adjusting the sword at his side just to remind you who's in charge. They stop at Marceau's cart. He greets them with warmth, maybe a wink. You can't hear what he says, but you see what happens. They laugh. One of them even buys a loaf. You freeze. They move on, stall to stall. Sometimes they sometimes they write something down. Sometimes they shake their heads. At one point, a young vendor starts arguing with them. Rookie mistake. He gets escorted away, protesting the whole time. His goods are left behind, which someone promptly steals. They're 2 stalls away now. You've never felt your heartbeat in your ears before. Now you do. One of the men points at your cheese. "Where's this from?" You answer quickly. "Bought from Marta's stall, she's licensed." He nods, doesn't write anything. Another gestures toward your apples. "Scale?" You don't have one. You price by item, not weight. Always have. Safer that way. You explain that, keeping your tone neutral. They exchange glances. Then mercifully they move on. You don't breathe again until they're halfway across the square. You sold nothing during the inspection. No one buys when the fear's in the air. You sit back on your crate, legs weak, arms limp. You just survived a brush with disaster, but there's no celebration, just the quiet relief of still being allowed to exist. That's what counts as a win in this life, not being erased. A fun fringe fact: some vendors in medieval cities created decoy stalls, empty setups with worthless goods that could be sacrificed during inspections while the real sales happened down a side alley. It was a shell game with bread instead of cups. Clever, but dangerous. You've considered it. Still might. As the crowd returns to normal, a street performer starts up nearby. He's juggling knives, a risky act given the crowd and the number of loose cobblestones, but the kids love it. They shriek every time he catches one. He draws a crowd. Crowds are good for business. You slide your board a little closer, trying to catch the edge of it. It works. 2 more sales, both apples. You even get a thank you from a woman with a baby strapped to her chest and desperation in her eyes. You nod and hand her a second apple for free. You know that look. You wear it every morning. Marceau notices. You see him watching you. He doesn't say anything, but the smirk twitches. You wonder what it'd take to wipe it off. You'd never act on it, of course. Probably. Late afternoon settles in. Your feet ache, your back is a slab of pain, and your cheese is beginning to rebel against its wrapping. But you're still here, still standing. Your coin pouch has a little more weight than usual. Not much, but enough to eat. The wind shifts, bringing a new smell from the east. Spices, meat, maybe cinnamon. Someone's cooking for the evening rush. Your stomach growls. You pack up your goods slowly, one eye still on the street. No more inspectors, no more fights, no sudden arrests. Today, somehow you weren't chewed up and spat out. You walk home past the blood boot man, the alley stew pot, and the weeping statue at the crossroads. No one stops you. You don't stop either. Back in your hovel, you sit on your mat, pour out your coins and count them with careful fingers. 6 coppers. Enough for tomorrow. And in your world, that's everything. You wake to the smell of meat, which is strange, because no one in your building can afford meat. Not even mystery meat. And certainly not at sunrise. You sit up cautiously, sniff the air again, and confirm, yes, that's something rich, oily, and vaguely roasted. Either someone's running a secret kitchen or a goat spontaneously combusted in the alley and no one told you. Your stomach twists, equal parts curiosity and hunger. You dress quickly, the usual grim routine, slip into the same threadbare shirt, wrestle with your stubborn boot, grab your plank and check your stash. You've got 4 decent apples today, no visible worms and minor bruising. Bread, 2 loaves, one hard as gilt, the other just a little stale. The prize, though, is the scrap of salted meat you snagged last night from a drunk vendor who bartered it for 2 coppers, and a warning about the toothless man with the birds. You didn't ask questions. The streets are alive when you step out more than usual. You spot a few strangers moving through the crowd, cloaks too new, shoes too polished. Foreigners, maybe. Or merchants. Or thieves pretending to be merchants. It's a hard line to draw these days. As you approach the square, the smell of roasted meat grows stronger. Then you see it. A man, no, a whole crew, has set up a spit in the centre of the market. Actual fire. A turning beast, probably pig, though it's been so dressed and basted it could be anything. There's fat dripping into the flames, crackling, popping. The smell clings to the air like perfume. He's got banners, real ones, with painted symbols, probably family or trade crests. His workers wear matching tunics. His knives are clean. The meat is carved, plated, sold with thick slices of white bread and garnishes you haven't seen in years. You hate him immediately. He's not just a vendor, he's an event. People flock to him, drawn like bugs to a lantern. The crowd flows past you without even glancing your way. Your board suddenly feels more pathetic than usual. You arrange your apples again. You shift your bread. You stand taller. Still no one stops. Apples, you shout. Loaves, chewable and mostly safe. Nothing. You spend the morning yelling into the wind while roast-beef man turns meat into money. His helpers keep the line moving. His smile never falters. You'd admire it if it weren't actively ruining your life. You make 1 sale by noon. An old man with half a tooth who buys your hardest loaf says it's for his landlord. You don't ask what he means by that. There's a moment where you seriously consider taking one of your apples, sneaking over to roast-beef's cart and hurling it at his banner just to see what happens. But you know what happens. He'll be fine. You'll be arrested, or fined, or mysteriously beaten in your sleep. so you just stand there, stewing in your own sweat and resentment. Street vendor competition isn't fair. It never was. Sure, everyone fights for attention, but there are levels. If you've got coin, connections, or charm, you rise. If you've got none of the above, you survive by screaming louder and hoping someone's too broke to walk the extra steps to the fancy stall. There's actually a documented case from 14th century Florence where a group of local vendors physically dragged a noble merchant's cart out of the plaza and dumped his olives in a pig trough. You envy their beggary and their access to pig troughs. Someone finally stops at your stall. A boy, maybe 8, dirt smeared across one cheek, eyes darting like a thief's. He asks for an apple. You give him one. He hands you a button. You stare at the button. It's wood, carved, actually kind of nice. You sigh. Take the other one too, you say, but tell people you paid with gold. He grins and vanishes into the crowd. You pocket the button. Might be useful, or might just roll around in your pouch for the next year like every other someday trinket you collect. By mid-afternoon, the meat vendor's line starts to shrink. The smell lingers, though, like a ghost. It's hard to sell dry bread when the air still tastes like bacon. You consider repackaging your meat scrap as artisan jerky, then remember it's gone soft in the sun and probably unsafe even by your low standards. You watch as roast beef man's helpers begin cleaning up. He's wiping his hands with cloth that's whiter than any part of your wardrobe. The coins he's raked in today probably outweigh your entire year's income. He catches your eye, smiles, nods. You nod back. You'd punch him if it wouldn't cost you everything. A shadow falls across your board. You look up to see a woman, probably a cook. She's got the wide shoulders and burnt sleeves of someone who works next to fire all day. She inspects your bread. This the soft one? Softest I've got. She squints at it. It'll do. Got stew at home. Need something to float in it. You hand it over. She tosses you a coin. You thank her, genuinely. She nods once and walks off. Another customer. Another inch of survival. There's a scholarly debate about whether these travelling vendors with their flash and spectacle helped or hurt the local economy. Some argue they brought variety, broke up the monotony, gave people hope. Others say they destabilised pricing, undermined trust, and made life harder for everyday sellers. You have an opinion, it's mostly curse words. Late in the day, a drunkard stumbles past and tries to buy your last apple with a kiss and a promise. You decline. He tells you you'll regret it. You already do. You pack up in the last light, board under your arm, coin pouch heavy with exactly 4 coins and 1 wooden button. You limp home. The pigs greet you with a snort and a fresh pile of filth. You sit on your mat and stare into the dark, still tasting the meat you never ate. You survive another day, but your envy has teeth. You don't even get to unpack your basket the next morning before it happens. The lawman cometh. You're standing in your usual spot, trying to decide which of your 3 loaves is least embarrassing to feature up front, when you see him pushing through the crowd like a shark cutting through a school of sick fish. His chain is visible, hanging just far enough out of his surcoat to remind everyone who he works for. Not the people, definitely not you, but the local magistrate who you've heard hasn't walked through this market in years unless he's being carried on a litter and sipping something spiced. You know the lawman, everyone does. Baldric, mid-40s, thick arms, faced like a weathered boot. Smells faintly of leather and power abuse. He's the kind of man who fines you for selling too close to the tannery one day, and then fines you again for being too far from it the next. And he's always got his notebook. Not for record keeping, just for looking busy while deciding who to target next. You lower your head slightly. Try to make yourself invisible. Of course it doesn't work. Your stall doesn't have a canopy or a decorative jug of herbs or a fake license hanging up. It has apples, bread, sadness. Morning, Baldric says. He doesn't mean it. You force a smile. Lovely day for selling bread. He ignores the attempt at charm and points at your plank. You've moved. You blink. I shifted about a foot to the left. I needed to avoid that. You gesture toward the rotting vegetable pile oozing near the wall. Regulations state your pitch is fixed. You're outside your bounds. You know this game. If you argue, it costs more. If you grovel, it still costs something. The only winning move is paying before he makes it worse. How much, you ask. 2 copper, and 1 more for the delay. Delay? You only just opened? You bite the inside of your cheek, fish 3 coins from your pouch, and hand them over without flinching. That's nearly half your expected earnings gone before your first sale. He drops the coins into his pouch, nods like he's done you a favour, and moves on. You watch him vanish into the crowd, off to harass a basket seller whose face falls the moment Baldric points. So begins another day. This kind of thing isn't rare. Lawmen in your world don't exist to protect you. They're enforcers of arbitrary rules, interpreters of unwritten codes, and part-time extortionists. Some of them believe they're just keeping order. Others just enjoy the power. But all of them eventually end up costing you coin, stock, or dignity. Historically, there were supposed to be protections, city charters, merchant courts, even appeals. But appeals require time, money, and someone to speak on your behalf. You have bread crusts and a plank. That's it, you get back to shouting. Bread, apples, cheap and honest. The honesty part is questionable. One of your apples has a wormhole the size of a quail egg. You gently rotate it so that side faces the wall. A woman approaches. She looks cautious. You recognise the type, someone just starting to fall on hard times. Her cloak's clean but fraying, her shoes still have soles, but the laces are mismatched. She picks up an apple. How much? You tell her. She hesitates, looks over her shoulder, then leans in. Do you take trade? You eye her hand. She's holding a pair of brass pins, decorative, worn, probably heirlooms. Worth something, sure, but not edible. You shrug. 1 for 2 loaves. She pauses. 2 pins for a loaf and the apple. You nod. She hands them over fast, snatches her food, and walks away before anyone sees her bartering like a pauper. You tuck the pins into your pouch. Someone might buy them, or melt them down, or laugh in your face, worth a try. A shout rises nearby. Someone's being dragged away. You catch a glimpse. A boy, maybe 12, his arms full of loaves. Not his. A baker's assistant is screaming that the boy stole half a tray. The guards are already halfway through a beating by the time the crowd pulls back. You don't watch. You've seen enough of those to know how they end. Sometimes they throw the thief in the stocks, other times he just disappears. Either way, no bread makes it back. A quirky truth, theft in the market wasn't always punished. Some city officials turned a blind eye if the thief was clever or young enough. Others made public examples. And sometimes merchants caught the thief and offered them a job instead, if they were impressed. But you don't have the luxury of mercy. If someone steals from you, you starve. Later, a group of guards comes back. Not Baldric this time. These ones are younger, armed, and looking for something. They check stalls, overturn crates. They are not asking for coin, this is different. One stops at your board and points at your bread. Any mould? Only in the personality, you reply before your brain catches up with your mouth. He narrows his eyes. You quickly add, no mould, fresh baked. He lifts one loaf, pokes it, sniffs it, then nods. Keep it clean. They move on. You exhale for the first time in minutes. By late afternoon you've sold half your goods, enough for a meal, maybe enough for some fresh cloth to patch your sleeve before it splits. A customer buys a loaf and hands you a silver coin by mistake. You see it the second it hits your hand. She's already turned away. You hesitate. Call out. She doesn't hear, or pretends not to. You look at the coin, enough to buy apples for a week. You keep it. You tell yourself it's survival, not theft, not really. Another scholarly debate comes to mind, whether morality changes under poverty. Some argue the poor held to community values even in desperation. Others suggest that hunger rewrote rules. You lean toward the latter. Starvation is the mother of justification. As the sun sinks, you pack your board. A new splinter stabs your thumb. You suck the blood, not bothering to bandage it. Too expensive. Besides, the pigs won't care if you bleed a little. You trudge home. Inside your room, the smell of rot hits you. Something's gone off in the corner. You'll find it later. For now, you count your coins, weigh the brass pins, and marvel at the fact that you still have some bread left for yourself. Another day of selling. Another dance with the law. Another inch closer to something. Maybe tomorrow you'll shift 2 feet to the right. Maybe you'll vanish altogether. Tonight, though, you sleep. Because tomorrow always comes. The smell hits you first. Not the usual stew of smoke, sweat, and rotting cabbage. No, this is something different. Something familiar. Your eyes flutter open, and for a moment you think you're still dreaming. Because the scent is warm, earthy, almost sweet. It's roasted chestnuts. You sit up slowly. That scent doesn't belong in your building. Chestnuts cost more than your average meal, and the only people who usually sell them are travelling vendors with charm, fancy iron pans, and the kind of charisma that can survive 4 straight hours of heckling. You shuffle toward the shuttered window, crack it open, and peek outside. There he is! A street performer, or maybe a travelling peddler. It's hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. He's got a patched tunic, but it's colourful in that deliberate way. Like a stage costume meant to scream, "I'm poor," but delightfully quirky. He's got a cart with a little iron drum that he turns with a crank, and as it spins, the chestnuts inside tumble and roast, hissing and popping like tiny fireworks. Steam rises, the smell wafts. It's practically witchcraft. You curse under your breath. This guy is about to suck up every hungry coin in a 3-street radius, but you admire his setup. He doesn't just sell chestnuts, he sings, he tells jokes, he flirts with the widows and winks at the drunks. He's a walking performance piece with snacks. You pack your basket in silence. Today's stock, 3 apples, 2 loaves, still soft somehow, and a chunk of cheese you're not entirely sure isn't alive. You eyeball it. It eyeballs you back. You wrap it tighter in linen and pretend that didn't happen. Down at the market, it's buzzing already. The chestnut guy has a line. People are buying them not just to eat, but to hold, because they're hot and it's cold, and anything warm is worth gold this early in the day. You find your usual spot still open, which feels like winning a small war. You stake your claim with a firm thud of your plank, arrange your goods and start shouting. Bread and apples, good enough for breakfast or throwing at someone you hate? A few chuckles, that's something. One person stops and buys an apple. You nod to yourself. Game on. And then mid-morning the loud ones arrive. Every market has them. The loud, the lame and the lonely. The characters who survive not just by selling, but by being seen. They don't just have goods, they have voices like siege engines and personalities built for chaos. And this group is a particularly aggressive subset. A group of herb sellers who travel together, wear matching flower crowns and sing while they sell. That would be annoying enough, but they've also brought a drum. It's not good drumming either. It's loud, uneven, and designed to bludgeon the ears. You grit your teeth and keep shouting. They drown you out. Of course they do. Boy approaches your stall, points at your cheese. What's that? Technically, dairy. He frowns. Smells like it's thinking about becoming a weapon. Could be, you say. 2 coppers if you want to find out. He grins and hands over the coins. You wrap the cheese and try not to look relieved. That was your riskiest item and now it's gone. You feel lighter. Then a man sidles up to you. Grey beard, eyes like glass marbles. He doesn't want food. He wants to talk. Did you know, he says, that the moon controls the spoiling of fruit? You blink. I did not. Oh yes, apples rot faster under the waning gibbous. It's the humours. You nod slowly. Makes sense. That's why I never eat apples on Wednesdays. Naturally. He nods solemnly and walks away without buying anything. You watch him go and wonder whether to start pretending you're a lunar expert just to scare off other non-customers. But this is market life. You don't just sell, you endure. You play listener to half-mad philosophers, flirt with grandmothers, threaten rats, dodge pickpockets, and occasionally get sneezed on by someone who smells like they've been soaking in ale since birth. It's exhausting. But it's also weirdly necessary. These strange people, the noise, the shouting, the clashing personalities, they are part of the machine. If everyone were polite, quiet and sane, you'd never make a sale. Half your customers stop out of curiosity or chaos. You're a cog in a very strange wheel. There's a fringe historical theory that medieval markets functioned as early social therapy, a place where isolation was broken by forced interaction. People came not just to buy, but to be seen, heard, judged and remembered. You don't disagree. You've seen more life in one day of shouting, "Buy my stale bread," than most castle-bound lords see in a season. A commotion breaks out near the centre of the square. A donkey has escaped its tether and is now enthusiastically munching someone's lettuce display. The lettuce seller, Elric, a normally calm man, is screaming, not at the donkey but at the crowd for laughing. No one helps. They just cheer the donkey on. The chestnut vendor makes up a song on the spot. You hear the chorus, "Donkey eats your profits, Elric sells you loss." It's awful and catchy. You chuckle, then catch Elric glaring. You look away and pretend to reorganise your apples. Eventually the donkey is led away, the lettuce display is swept into a gutter, and peace returns. Sort of. A woman buys your last loaf and pays in coin and gossip. She tells you the widow Branca is sleeping with a guardsman. You tuck the information away. It's always good to know who's connected and who's distracted enough to be pickpocketed. A scholarly debate you heard once claimed that markets were economies of noise, that the volume of your voice directly correlated to your success. You believe it. Your voice is hoarse. Your throat feels like you gargled a cactus, but you've sold nearly everything. As dusk creeps in, the chestnut vendor starts packing up. The drum stops turning. The last of the steam rises from his iron pan. People wander off, pockets lighter, stomachs warmer. You count your coins, 7 coppers, 1 more than yesterday. Progress. On your way home, the flower crown herb sellers pass you. One winks, another offers you a sprig of something that smells like damp hay and false hope. You decline politely. Back in your room, the pigs grunt their approval. You feed them a leftover apple core and collapse onto your mat, boots still on. Your body aches. Your brain buzzes. And for a moment you realise you don't just survive this life, you belong to it. Festivals in the city hit different. You can feel it even before the sun rises, this weird buzzing tension in the air, like the cobblestones themselves are holding their breath. You wake up to the sound of singing. Not the usual tuneless muttering of a drunk under your window, but real singing. Harmonies, instruments, bells. You blink into the dim room and wonder if you accidentally died in your sleep and woke up in someone else's story. But no, the pig stench is still there, and your knees still ache. Definitely still alive. You sit up, listening. Outside, someone's already banging on a drum. You can hear laughter. Laughter. At dawn, you rub your eyes, grab your coat and shuffle toward the door with a strange sensation creeping in. Hope. Not the dreamy sun-dappled kind, but the sharp, urgent version. Festival days are gold rush hours for vendors like you. You could double your coin if you're loud, fast and only slightly lucky. You practically sprint down the street, your basket bouncing on your hip, your plank knocking into your back with every step. The air smells different today. Baking bread, roasting meat, fresh-cut herbs, it's intoxicating and terrifying. Because while it feels like magic, it also means the competition has just tripled. You arrive in the market square to find it already transformed. Banners hang between windows, ribbons twist around the street lamps. Stalls you've never seen before have popped up like mushrooms after rain. A man on stilts walks past, juggling 3 bottles. You narrowly avoid being run over by a cart painted bright blue and loaded with what looked like pickled eggs in glass jars shaped like saints. Your usual spot is gone, of course, overrun by a spice dealer with more incense than actual stock. You settle for a corner between a man selling fried eels and a girl with a tray of fortune cookies. Actual fortune scribbled on parchment stuffed into folded dough. It's ridiculous, and it'll probably make her richer than you by sundown. You lay out your goods, 3 loaves, 2 apples, 1 small pie, acquired through backroom bartering and possibly cursed. The pie is your wild card today. You don't know what's in it, you don't ask. Then you start shouting. You don't even bother with subtlety. Bread, pie, apples so sweet they'll make your teeth complain. The trick on a day like this is energy. People are here to spend, but also to gawk, wander and get distracted. If you don't catch their attention in the first few seconds, they've already moved on to the man offering free samples of candied scorpion. A woman stops. Her dress is too clean for someone shopping from you, but she has the look of someone playing poor for the day, slumming for adventure. She squints at your pie. What's in it? Everything your heart desires, you say. She smiles. And my stomach? That's a different story. Want to roll the dice? She laughs and hands over a coin. You pocket it and pray that the pie doesn't bite her back. Festival days bring in the full circus. You spot jugglers, fire breathers, a man swallowing swords, only he's not very good at it and keeps coughing halfway through. There's even a monk walking around with a tray of relics, offering blessings for tips. You consider asking him to bless your bread, but he's charging 2 copper for holy aura, and your bread already smells blessed by mildew. Children dart past your stall constantly. You have to guard your basket like it's a treasure chest. One girl with wild hair and a lopsided grin stops in front of you and asks, "How much for a sniff?" "A sniff?" you ask, confused. She nods. "Of the pie?" You shrug. "1 whisper." She leans in, sniffs, then whispers, "You're missing a shoe?" You look down. You're not. Still you hand her a crust for the creativity. There's a historical tidbit floating in the back of your mind. On festival days, vendors were sometimes fined for being too aggressive, or worse, for causing moral confusion, meaning they sold fake charms, love potions, or claimed their turnips could cure gout. You avoid that particular pitfall by never claiming anything will fix your life. By noon, the crowd's so thick it feels like you're selling inside a beehive. You yell, you point, you wave a loaf like it's a magic wand. You sweat through your shirt. You sell an apple to a man in full armour who insists on biting it dramatically in front of a cluster of children. They cheer. You give him a discount for the performance. Then things get weird. A puppet show sets up across from you. Not just any puppet show, a murder mystery puppet show. There's fake blood, tiny screams, and then a puppet detective with a monocle made from wire. It draws a massive crowd. Unfortunately, that crowd now blocks your stall completely. You can't yell over the show. You try. No one hears you. You're about to storm over and demand they relocate when someone taps your shoulder. A woman, short, middle-aged, wearing a shawl that smells like lavender and desperation. 3 loaves, she says, for the orphans' table. You nod. She gives you a few copper, and you slide her the bread. That moment, quiet, fast, forgettable to anyone else, feels like the only real thing all day. Later, a scholar type buys your last apple. He's drunk and claims he's writing a treatise on the symbolic undercurrent of bread as power. You just take his coin and wish him luck. As the sun begins to set, the market keeps roaring. The puppet show ends in a cheer. The stilt walker falls off his stilts and limps away, yelling something about drunken sabotage. The sword swallower vomits behind a cart, and yet the energy stays electric. You pack your board slowly, not out of fatigue this time, but out of awe. You actually made more than usual today. 7 coppers, 1 silver, 1 button, small piece of lace from a noble girl who said she was breaking class expectations, whatever that means. The best part, you're full. Someone gave you a meat skewer in trade for your most charming shout. You don't even remember what you yelled, but it worked. Back in your room, you light a stub of a candle and sit on your mat. Your bones ache. Your brain buzzes. Your pocket's heavier than usual. You're exhausted. But for once, not starving, not broken, just tired. And maybe, just maybe, a little proud. They say nothing spreads faster than fire, but those people have clearly never watched plague panic roll through a city square. Fire burns in one direction. Plague hysteria explodes in every direction. And today, you wake to the sound of a town crier screaming something about fever boils and divine punishment, which is never a promising way to start a workday. You sit up slowly, pulse already racing. There's a cold pit in your stomach. Not just hunger this time. This is a different kind of fear. You've seen this pattern before. You remember the last wave, the whispers, the sudden silences, the carts rolling by piled high with bodies, and the smell. Always the smell. You dress quickly, shoving a bit of bread into your mouth as you go. It's dry enough to scrape your throat on the way down, but you need something in your gut before heading out. You grab your board, your basket, and your pouch of what little coin remains. Then, with a breath that feels far too dramatic for this early in the morning, you step into the street. Right away, you know the day's different. People are talking fast, too fast, their words clipped and breathless. There's less laughter, more glances over shoulders. Everyone's walking like they're late to their own funerals. You reach the square and find it half full instead of bursting. Some vendors are missing entirely, others are already packing up. The baker across the way has stacked his bread in neat little towers, but no one's touching them. One customer is actually holding a cloth over her mouth while looking at onions. You find a corner, not your usual pitch, but it'll do, and set up fast. You've only got 3 loaves today, 1 apple, and a jug of what you're calling herbal water, which is really just leftover steepings from your neighbour's attempt at dyeing socks. But if you say it cures illness, who's to argue? Bread, you shout, apple, healing water, guaranteed to keep the boils away. You don't believe it, of course, but fear sells, and it sells. Within the first hour you've moved 2 loaves and the apple. The water goes next. You charge a copper for it, and the woman buying it doesn't even ask what's in it. She just clutches it like a relic and scurries off. A man approaches, pale-faced and sweating. He doesn't cough, doesn't wheeze, but he's definitely not healthy. He asks if you have garlic. You don't. He mumbles something about demons in the blood and walks away, muttering what might be a prayer or a recipe. Either way, you don't stop him. You start thinking maybe you should get more into the charm and cure trade. It's not unheard of. During plague outbreaks, vendors across Europe made fortunes selling talismans, garlic ropes, and pungent concoctions meant to keep death at bay. Some believed that strong-smelling herbs could repel the disease, which was supposedly carried in bad air. People wore pomanders, bathed in vinegar, and clutched cloves like lifelines. You once met a woman who sold pebbles soaked in her own spit for protection. She made more in a week than you did in a month. So you pivot, you start shouting about your plague-resistant bread. Is it different from regular bread? No, but it sounds important. You claim the flour came from fields far beyond the fog. That's technically true. You don't specify what kind of fog. A customer buys your last loaf, pays extra, wants a charm too. You hand him a splinter from your board. Blessed by Saint Briadicus, you say. He kisses it and walks away. You feel dirty, but richer. A scholarly debate that always crops up around this kind of crisis is whether the average medieval person actually believed these so-called cures, or if it was just about feeling less helpless. Some argue people genuinely thought these charms worked. Others suggest it was a form of collective theatre, a performance of control in a world that offered none. You're starting to think it doesn't matter. Belief and fear are two sides of the same coin, and today everyone's tossing that coin constantly. By midday, the square is noticeably emptier. The rumour has shifted from fever boils to black blood. Someone saw a man collapse in the chapel. Someone else says the bishop already left the city. No one wants to get too close to anyone else. Vendors start spacing their stalls farther apart, building invisible barriers of breath. Even you stop shouting for a while. You just sit on your crate and watch people scurry past with herbs tucked into their collars and cloths tied over their mouths. A boy runs through the market yelling, "There are burning corpses on the hill!" Everyone flinches. No one corrects him. You wonder if it's true. You wonder if it matters. Then, from across the square, you see a new face. A woman dressed in layered cloth with beads around her neck, and a look that says she hasn't been afraid of anything in years. She walks with a slow, deliberate pace, completely unbothered. People part for her. She sets up a tiny stand, no cart, no canopy, just a cloth on the ground and a few bundles of herbs. She starts whispering to anyone who'll listen. They lean in. Then they hand over coins. You watch her. You admire her, sometimes. She's not shouting. She doesn't have to. Eventually she catches your eye, nods once. You nod back. A brief moment of recognition between two hustlers in different uniforms. By late afternoon, the panic has started to congeal into something heavier. A lot of the vendors are gone now. The city watchers appeared, not the tax-collecting kind, but the real ones, with clubs and orders. They're not here to shop, they're watching. That's always a bad sign. You pack up early, not because you're sold out, though you mostly are, but because it feels like the city might choke on its own fear before sundown. You carry your board home, weaving through alleyways, avoiding eye contact. Every cough you hear makes your spine stiffen. At your door you pause. There's a chalk mark on the frame, a circle with an X through it. You wipe it away before going inside. Later, lying on your mat, you sip some of the fake herbal water you saved for yourself. It tastes like regret. And you think about St. Briadicus. You made him up today, but somehow he feels more real than half the saints in your neighbour's prayer book. You close your eyes and hope he's listening. You wake to tiny hands pawing at your basket. Not a rat, not a thief. A child, dirty-faced, barefoot, and not much taller than your knees. She freezes when your eyes open, her fingers still gripping the edge of your bread sack. You stare at each other for a beat, her wide-eyed and terrified, you bleary and too exhausted to yell. "Are you starving?" you ask flatly. She nods. Once. You sigh and sit up. She flinches but doesn't run. You reach into your basket, pull out a heel of bread, the stale, crusted edge you were saving for later, and hand it to her. She grabs it and darts away like a mouse into the walls, vanishing through the cracks in the city. You hear her chewing before she's fully gone. She doesn't even stop to thank you. She can't afford the time. You lean back and stare at the ceiling. You should be angry. That's food you needed. But you're not. You're just tired. Tired of acting like a full belly makes you more human than someone without one. You dress quickly, because what else are you going to do? Not sell? Not stand in the street and shout your lungs into the void for a few coppers? You grab your board, your dwindling supply of bread and apples, and what might be cheese but is honestly just a beige mystery at this point. You walk to the market on autopilot, feet slapping familiar stones. The air smells sharper today, cleaner almost. The panic has shifted into resignation. People aren't running anymore, they're avoiding. No one touches anything without wrapping their hand in cloth. There's a lot more prayer happening too. You see people muttering, crossing themselves, clutching holy tokens like talismans. When you reach the square, you're not the first, but you are the only one with kids. You hadn't noticed it until now, but as you set up your plank, you realise there are children everywhere. Not playing, working. A boy with a voice too shrill to be threatening is selling turnips out of a broken basket. A girl with no shoes is pushing pie slices she clearly didn't bake. There's a gang of 3 siblings trying to sell holy dust. They say they swept from the altar steps of the cathedral. You know those steps are just cracked stone and pigeon droppings, but you respect the hustle. You look around and realise the usual vendors are gone, too sick, too scared, or just disappeared. So the children have stepped in. It's not unusual. In lean years, kids fill the gaps. You've seen boys no older than 6 screaming like grown men about the freshness of their fish. Girls carrying pails of milk heavier than they are, arms trembling, eyes scanning for guards or thieves. Sometimes they're orphans. Sometimes they're just the 2nd, 3rd or 7th child of a family that can't feed them without sending them to shout for scraps. You remember being one of them. You didn't start selling as an adult. You were thrown into it, like a chicken into a river, flapping and screeching and barely keeping your head above water. You eye a group of kids now, huddled around a ragged little girl with no teeth in the front. She's singing, loud, off-key, but her table of dried plums is drawing a crowd. People stop, they buy. Not because the fruit's good, it's not, but because the performance is convincing. You envy her energy and her confidence. At that age, you'd barely spoken above a whisper. Then again, you hadn't had a choice. You'd watched your older brother sell for years before your voice cracked, and you took his place when he got sick. You shake the thought off and start yelling, "Bread, apples, half of each if you're feeling cautious." You sell a loaf quickly. A woman buys 2 apples and gives you 3 coins. One is bent, one is chipped. One might be chocolate. You bite it discreetly, not chocolate, just filthy. A guard strolls past and eyes the children. You tense, but he doesn't shoo them off. He keeps walking. That's the silent agreement. During plague panic, kids get a longer leash. Everyone wants to believe the children will survive. There's a moment mid-morning when the sky clears and sunlight actually touches the stones in the square. It's jarring. Everything looks a little more hopeful under golden light, even if the air still smells faintly of vinegar and boiled cabbage. You take a breath. You swear it doesn't taste like mould. Then you hear the chanting. You turn toward the cathedral. A group of pilgrims in white robes marches through the street, lashes in hand, beating their backs with leather cords. Blood spatters the cobbles. They chant as they go, crying out for forgiveness, for mercy, for the plague to be lifted. People stop and stare. Some cross themselves. Others just go quiet. The kids don't stop selling. Neither do you. The scholars argue about whether child labour in the Middle Ages was necessary or exploitative. You think that's like asking if fire is good or bad. It depends on whether you're freezing or burning. The truth is, children worked because they had to, because hunger doesn't care about age, and markets don't ask for birth certificates. You were useful as soon as you could lift a basket and repeat a price. You watch one girl haul a crate of potatoes nearly as big as her. She slips. Potatoes roll into the mud. She doesn't cry, just chases them down, wiping them on her shirt, face red with embarrassment. You want to help her, but you're trying to sell too, and your own feet are just as unsteady. Late in the day, a boy sells you a bit of dried meat for a button and half an apple. It tastes like old rope, but it's the most protein you've had in a week. You thank him. He nods. You don't ask his name, he doesn't ask yours. When you finally pack up, your fingers are aching and your head pounds from too much yelling and not enough water. You limp home, brushing past children still calling out prices in fading light. Back in your room, you sit on your mat, count your coins, 6 coppers, 1 silver, and a small carved horse someone used instead of actual currency. You set the horse beside your bed. Tomorrow those kids will be back, so will you. This isn't a job you do, it's a job that does you. Every day, every age, every child. You're picking at the hem of your sleeve when you notice it's starting to unravel again. thread by miserable thread. It's not even your sleeve originally. You bought the tunic second-hand from a peddler who claimed it had once belonged to a priest. Though based on the smell, the previous owner was probably a butcher, or a particularly damp scarecrow. Still, it served you well through rain, mud, and at least one memorable run-in with a goose that mistook you for competition. Clothing's not just about warmth in your world, it's identification. It announces your station before you ever open your mouth. And right now, you're dressed in extreme poverty, possibly contagious, with subtle notes of hasn't washed in 3 weeks, and a lovely undertone of don't ask about the stains. In the medieval market, this is your camouflage. Looking like someone no one needs to rob, but also no one wants to arrest. It's a delicate balance. You tie up your shirt as best you can, sling your board across your back and head for the square. You've got 1.5 loaves of bread today, 2 small apples, and then a special pastry that's more air than substance, but still looks pretty from a distance. You've also wrapped a strip of red cloth around your waist. Not a belt, not a sash, just something. A splash of colour. You're trying to look intentional, like maybe your poverty is fashionable or at least curated. The market's already buzzing by the time you arrive. You pass a fur trader with a rabbit pelt strung from his cap like a prize, and a woman dressed in so many shawls she resembles a walking linen closet. Everyone's advertising through appearance today. The shoemaker's wife wears a bright yellow kerchief to draw attention to her stock. The rag seller's kids have matching green smocks. It's a pageant of poverty, and you're in the chorus line. You find your usual spot, miracle of miracles, still unclaimed, and set up fast. You angle your board toward the early foot traffic and try to appear confident. Even when you're exhausted, sore, and dressed like a hungover druid, confidence sells. A woman passes and pauses. She eyes your bread. "You got yeast in that?" she asks. "Would you believe me if I said yes?" "Not really." "Then no." She grins and hands you a coin. Success. You shift your weight, trying not to notice that your right boot has officially cracked open near the toe. You can feel your sock against the cobblestone. It squishes unpleasantly. You make a mental note to either fix it tonight or go barefoot and tell people it's for religious reasons. A young man selling smoked fish walks past, dressed in a dark blue tunic with slashed sleeves revealing white linen underneath. It's worn but striking. People notice him. Some stop just because of how well he wears his desperation. You watch him, thinking about your own look. You glance down at your threadbare shirt, your patched breeches, and your shapeless wool hat. It's not great. It's camouflage, yes, but maybe you've leaned too far into invisibility. Historically, vendors had to walk a fine line with their clothing, appearing poor enough to be relatable, but not so poor that they repelled customers. Some records even mention laws against false finery, where poorer tradespeople were fined for dressing above their station. You've never had that problem. Your wardrobe is safely below suspicious, but maybe it's time for an upgrade, a touch of flair. Not fancy, just intentional. You remember seeing a discarded blue ribbon near the tanner's stall last week. You'd ignored it then, but now, maybe tying it around your hat would make you look less like part of the trash pile. A customer walks up. You recognise her, one of the laundresses from the river. She always smells like ash and river foam. She buys your apple without haggling and offers a strip of cloth in trade, a pale green patch with tiny white flowers. "You need this more than I do," she says before walking away. You hold it like a treasure. It's soft, clean and not damp. You tie it around your wrist. It feels ridiculous, but also good, like you claimed a bit of yourself back from the mud. Then a guard walks by. His boots are polished. His tunic is spotless. You can practically smell the judgment as his eyes scan your stall. You stiffen, preparing for the usual barrage of questions, but he just says, "Nice cloth," and keeps walking. You blink. That might have been a compliment, or a warning. Still, it's the closest thing to approval you've gotten from a city official in months. Later in the day, a nobleman's carriage rumbles past. You catch only a glimpse of the figures inside. Velvet, feathers, gold, but they're gone in seconds. Their driver doesn't even glance at the vendors. But a strange thing happens. A girl from the carriage tosses something from the window, a strip of lace, white and delicate. It flutters down like a bird and lands near your stall. Several people stop. No one touches it. Superstition. Maybe it's cursed, maybe it's blessed. Maybe it's neither and just lace. You pick it up, It's beautiful, expensive, out of place, and you tie it onto your plank like a flag, and people notice. Your next few customers seem just a little more interested. A woman asks about the lace. You say it was gifted by a passing noble. Technically true. She buys your last piece of bread and thanks you twice. A scholarly debate comes to mind, one you overheard from a travelling teacher who once bought your cheese and wouldn't stop talking about performative identity. His point was that how people dressed and carried themselves in public created an unspoken narrative about their worth. The market, he said, was a theatre of poverty, with everyone playing a part. You're starting to understand that more and more. Near closing time, a boy walks up and stares at your lace. "Is it magic?" he asks. "It is," you say without hesitation. He smiles and buys your last apple. You pack up slowly, careful not to lose the cloth around your wrist or the lace tied to your board. On the walk home, people glance at you. Not with pity, with curiosity. That's new. Back in your room, you set your coins aside and lay the lace flat like it's a holy relic. You smile to yourself in the dark. You didn't sell more today because your bread was better. You sold more because you looked like someone worth buying from. Clothing isn't just cover. It's your costume, your armour, your advertisement. And you're finally learning how to wear it. You've always thought women made the better vendors. That's not just flattery, it's survival math. They shout louder, sell smarter, and carry twice the weight with half the help. And unlike most of the men in this trade, yourself included, they know how to multitask, selling, scolding, calculating, dodging hands that try to grab more than just apples. You've seen women negotiate 3 separate transactions while wrangling a toddler and fighting off a dog with a soup ladle. That's not talent. That's battlefield training. You're thinking about all this because today you're working next to Tilda. Mid-30s, sharp-tongued and dangerous with a basket of leeks. She sells herbs mostly, real ones and real ones. Some cure headaches, some cure boredom, some cure neither, but smell nice. She's one of those vendors who doesn't need to yell. People come to her, not for the goods, but for the gossip. And in this market, gossip is currency. You nod at her as you set up your plank. She nods back, then immediately says, "Your bread looks worse than last week." "Thanks," you reply. "So does your face." She grins. You're friends in the way street vendors are. Brutally honest, mutually suspicious, and quietly loyal. You've brought 3 loaves, 1 apple, and a little pot of jam you found during a barter deal that might have involved a chicken, and definitely involved some questionable ethics. Tilda eyes the jam. "That real?" she asks. "Real enough." "A trade for time?" "Sure." And just like that, your inventory shifts. Not a sale, but valuable, because time sells better in colder weather, and the wind's picking up already. You scan the market and notice something else. The women are out in force today, not just as customers, but as sellers, leaders, anchors. There's an old widow selling sewing needles from a basket tied to her hip, a mother-daughter pair hawking roast chestnuts with synchronized patter, a red-faced brewer's wife shouting about her healing ale like she's warding off demons, and men, a few, mostly quieter, mostly background. You don't take it personally. The market has always had a gender rhythm, some days male-dominated, others a chorus of women's voices. But during hard times, it's the women who show up and hold the street together with calloused hands and sharp eyes. There's a historical point there. In a lot of medieval cities, women made up a substantial portion of street vendors, especially in the lower classes. They sold food, herbs, textiles and small household goods. Some even ran what were essentially proto-business empires. They had apprentices, supply chains and loyal customers. Of course, they got no credit for any of it. No recognition, just suspicion and scrutiny. Take Tilda, for instance. She's been fined 3 times in the last 2 months. Not for theft, not for selling spoiled goods, but for disruptive conduct, meaning she yelled at a noble servant for pouring her time. Today a guard walks by and gives her stall an extra long look. She locks eyes with him. He moves on. You watch that, quietly impressed. If it had been you, he'd have made a comment, or worse. "Do they ever fine you?" you ask her. She snorts. "They try." I start talking about their mothers. They forget what they came for. Midday hits hard. The crowd thickens. A woman with a bandaged hand buys one of your loaves. Says it's for her son. Says he's sick. Says nothing else. You give her a discount. She doesn't thank you, but her eyes soften. Another woman, you think she's a washer from down near the river, approaches and eyes the time. How strong? Strong enough to ruin your enemies, Tilda replies. The woman laughs and buys 2 bunches. You shake your head. You could sell fog if you wanted to. I have, she says, dead serious. Then something happens. A young girl, maybe 12, walks past your stall and into the street. She's carrying a tray of meat pies, homemade probably, badly. Her dress is patched, and her hair's tied back with what looks like a shoelace. A man tries to grab her pie with one hand and her waist with the other. She twists, elbows him in the stomach, and keeps walking without missing a beat. You don't even move, neither does Tilda. You see that, you say. She's learning, Tilda replies. The girl disappears into the crowd, another tiny soldier in the army of market women. There's a fringe fact that always stuck with you. In some towns, women were forbidden from selling alone after sundown. Not for safety, but for morality, because apparently selling onions at 9 p.m. made you a temptress. Meanwhile, men sold barrels of ale until dawn and got knighted. But here, in your square, the women own the dusk. By late afternoon you've sold everything but your time. Tilda's made a killing. She hands you a small bunch without asking. For the pigs, she says. Are you calling me a pig? No, that's generous. Pigs have more manners. You snort and thank her anyway. She packs up. So do you. The sky's turning the colour of old pewter. Storm's coming maybe, or just another cold night. On the walk home you pass a woman carrying firewood and balancing a child on one hip. She nods at you. You nod back. Back in your room you toss the time onto the windowsill and sit down. You think about Tilda, about the meat pie girl, about the widow with the needles and the brewer's wife with the holy ale. You think about how the market is loud, rough and cruel, but also held together by women who refuse to be quiet, weak or invisible. You think about how many of them sold today, with no help, no license, and no mercy from the men in charge. And you think, if anyone's going to survive the madness of this city, it's them. The first thing you notice is the accent. You're arranging your bread, 2 loaves, one with a suspiciously soft corner, and muttering about the frostbite nipping at your fingers when a voice behind you says, "How much for the round one?" The words are shaped oddly, stretched like dough. It's not a local dialect, not even from the next town over. You turn and find yourself staring at a man with skin too clean, shoes too fine, and eyes that say I don't get told no very often. You answer carefully. 2 copper, or trade if it's good. He smiles, revealing a row of teeth that look like they've never chewed anything tougher than almond paste. Trade, he says, and pulls out a twist of dried fruit wrapped in parchment. Figs, you think, imported. The kind of thing only merchants or nobility ever get their hands on. He holds it like he's offering you a glimpse of paradise. You don't hesitate. You trade. The figs are sticky, sweet, and suspiciously preserved with something that definitely isn't salt. He thanks you and walks off, blending into a group of similarly overdressed, overconfident strangers. One of them is selling silk handkerchiefs, another is loudly trying to convince a cartload of locals that his Eastern peppers will cure everything from toothache to heartbreak. You recognise the type. Foreign merchants, wealthy, well-supplied, and usually a few laws above your head. They travel in small packs, like wolves dressed for a feast, and they bring goods you've only ever heard about in drunken songs. Their stalls pop up like mushrooms after rain, and just as suddenly they vanish. One day they're here with baskets of spices and exotic nuts. The next day, gone, leaving behind only broken deals and rumours. You watch as they set up a line of stalls right along the edge of the market's main path. Prime real estate usually reserved for the butcher and the fishmonger. Not today. Today the regulars are shunted aside. You and your board have been edged closer to the tannery, where the smell alone could send a person into a coma. You don't blame the newcomers. You blame the city watch who let them through the gates without question, and the mayor's nephew, who probably pocketed a bribe big enough to buy himself a new ox. Still, bitterness doesn't sell bread. You shout louder, wave your apples, slap your board when someone walks by too fast. But the crowd isn't listening today. They're dazzled, drawn like moths to the shimmer of silks, the scent of saffron, the promise of imported perfumes and dried apricots that smell like happiness. You manage to sell 1 loaf to a regular, a washerwoman who buys with the kind of distracted guilt usually reserved for pity purchases. I'd go look at the cinnamon man too, she mutters, but he's charging more than I make in a week. You nod, grateful for her coin. Then you see it happen. A scuffle, small but sharp. One of the silk sellers is arguing with a local weaver. You can't hear everything, but you catch the words stolen patterns and filthy copies. The weaver, red-faced and shaking, is shouting that the merchant stole her design and had it printed on cheaper cloth. The silk seller just laughs, holds up the offending fabric and says, "Your design? In your dreams, woman." A guard approaches. You brace yourself, and then the guard turns to the weaver and says, "Move along before you cause a scene." Just like that, she's silenced. The merchant smiles and resumes his pitch. You clench your jaw, you want to scream, but you don't, because you know exactly how this goes. The foreign merchants are above you, above the rules, above the system that binds you like rope and nails. They bring money, and money means influence. Doesn't matter if they lie, or cheat, or sell cloth that frays after one wash. They'll be gone before anyone holds them accountable. A quirky historical footnote. Some cities actually passed foreign merchant laws restricting what outsiders could sell and wear. It didn't always help. Merchants found loopholes, paid off officials, married locals, built alliances through coin and charm, and the street vendors, those without law, name or shield, were the poor ones crushed beneath it. By midday, the market feels like a battleground. Your side, the locals, is losing. A fig seller from Aragon has a crowd 10 deep. A perfume peddler is letting people sniff little velvet satchels, each more intoxicating than the last. You can't compete with luxury, but you can try something else. You drag your board forward just a few feet, close enough to catch spillover from the crowd. You pull out the figs you were given earlier, mash them gently into a bowl with your thumb, and start calling "fig spread, local blend, tastes like gold, smells like freedom." A few people pause, one buys a bite for a copper. You nod like you've won the lottery. You sell the second apple, trade the third for a cracked bar of soap. By now your voice is hoarse, but you keep shouting, keep moving, because standing still feels like surrender. Then you see something odd. One of the spice sellers, tall, lean, with eyes too calm, is quietly packing up. You watch him fold cloth, roll bundles, tuck everything into a chest the size of a bread box. No announcement, no fuss, just vanishing. You blink, and he's gone. Another pack follows. By dusk, only 2 foreign stalls remain. The others are gone, as if the day itself swallowed them. You pack your board, heavier than usual. You didn't sell everything, but you sold enough. And you learned something. They come in with flash and fire, but they leave. You don't. You walk these stones every day. You shout through rain, plague and hunger. You're the bones of this market. And while they may sparkle like stars, you're the sky they vanish into. You smell the lies before you see them. The scent hits your nose like perfume poured over manure. Sweet, unnatural, and strong enough to give your remaining brain cells a beating. It's clove and lavender and something minty that makes your eyes water. You follow the scent through the square, weaving between carts and baskets, until you see them. Street performers, 3 of them to be precise. A juggler with an exaggerated moustache, a woman with a tambourine, and a suspiciously elaborate gown, and a man in a black cape who's pretending not to be a magician. He tosses a coin into the air, catches it behind a child's ear, and announces that he can predict the future using only the position of the stars and your mother's cooking habits. You know this act. It's always the same. The juggler distracts the crowd, the woman sings about true love and fortunes, and the magician slowly eases his way into your purse, your belt, or your entire stall if you're not careful. You grip your board tighter. Your bread might be stale and your apples bruised, but they're yours. The crowd's already thick around them. A small sea of hopeful faces and open coin purses. You spot at least 3 pickpockets moving through the group like shadows with grabby hands. Some are kids. One is dressed as a monk. You make eye contact with him. He winks. You start setting up nearby, not because you want to be part of the chaos, but because chaos brings traffic, and traffic brings coin. Bread, apples, magic not included but strongly implied, you yell. A few heads turn, a woman in a veil buys a loaf. A man with a nervous tic trades 2 apples for a chunk of what he claims is honeycomb. You don't ask questions. It's sweet. That's enough. Then a small boy, barefoot, smudged face, shirt several sizes too big, approaches and watches you with wide eyes. "What are you selling?" he asks. "Food." "What kind?" "The honest kind." He nods slowly. "You gonna do a trick?" You think about it, then pick up your apple, toss it in the air, catch it behind your back, and offer it to him with a dramatic bow. Ta-da! He claps like you just parted the sea. You smile, sometimes that's enough, but not always. Across the way, the fake magician has now discovered a silver ring in a woman's scarf. She gasps. Her husband looks unconvinced. The magician is quick to explain that the ring is cursed unless properly blessed for a modest fee. Of course, you watch as she hands over a coin, then another, then a third. It's painful to witness. You want to yell across the square, "He's a fraud, lady, that's your neighbour's ring. He nicked it 5 minutes ago," but you don't, because calling out a scam in public makes you look like the villain. That's the trick, isn't it? Street performers walk the same line as vendors. They live by noise, persuasion and charm, only they don't sell bread or apples. They sell belief, or more accurately, distraction. A historical aside, in many medieval towns, street performers and vendors shared the same licenses, if they had licenses at all. Some sold goods in the morning and performed in the evening. Others did both at once. There was even a documented case of a man in Ghent who sold cabbages while playing a flute with his nose. You kind of respect that. You've even performed once or twice, out of desperation. Sang a few verses of a tavern song you half remembered while dancing in place to keep warm. It earned you 3 coppers and a free kick from a guard who said you were disturbing the sanctity of the square. Sanctity in that case meant the area in front of the tax table. Still, the idea of performance sticks with you. Maybe you need to be louder, funnier. You remember the girl with the fortune cookies last week? She sold out by noon. People will buy anything if it sounds clever or smells expensive. You scratch your chin, then stand on your crate. "Step right up," you call. "Try the miracle bread, slightly holy, touched by divine flour and probably a rat." A few people laugh, one buys an apple. Encouraged, you keep going. You start pretending your bread can predict the weather. You claim your apples have names and complicated opinions about politics. It's ridiculous, and it works, but not for long, because now the performers are turning on you. Not physically, just vocally. The juggler calls out, "Don't waste your coin on soggy loaves. Come see real talent." The crowd chuckles. You glare at him. The magician waves a hand. "I see into this vendor's soul, and it is filled with crumbs and sadness." Okay, that one hurts. Mostly because it's true. You step down. No use shouting louder than a man with a cape and a pocket full of stolen rings. You retreat to your quieter corner spot tactics. Talk to people one-on-one. Keep your tone friendly, your eyes sharp, your hands on your coin pouch. You survive the rest of the day that way. Small sales, a few trades. One woman swaps a pair of leather gloves for your last piece of bread. They're cracked and cold, but they're yours now. Better than nothing. By late afternoon, the performers are gone. Not packed up, just gone, like they never existed. The crowd disperses. You scan the square and count the damage. 1 stolen basket, 2 vanished purses, and a dozen confused customers wandering around trying to figure out if the magic seeds they bought will actually sprout a husband. They won't. You pack your board and your gloves and start the walk home. The streets are quieter now. Even the rats look tired. You pass a beggar and toss him the honeycomb. He grins, you nod. Back in your room you lay out the gloves like they're relics. You made it through the day without being robbed or humiliated, which feels like an achievement. You think about the performers, how they captured attention so easily, how they lied so beautifully. You can't juggle, you can't dance, but you can survive. That's a trick too, and it might be the only one that matters. The first thing you notice this morning, after the cold, after the familiar pig grunts from beneath the floorboards, after the stiffness in your joints that now feels like part of your anatomy, is the sound of distant bells. Not the usual hourly clang of the cathedral tower, but a different rhythm. Slower, heavier, funeral bells. And that can mean only one of 2 things in your world. Someone important is dead, or pilgrims are coming. As you trudge toward the market, basket on hip, board under arm, breadcrumbs in beard, you start to notice the signs. Not the usual shouting or gossip, no, this is subtler. The smell of beeswax and incense wafting from street chapels, line of beggars repositioning themselves closer to the crossroads, cloth merchant hastily sewing little wooden cross medallions to his tunics. Pilgrim, definitely pilgrims. By the time you reach the square, there are already filtering in dozens of them, maybe hundreds, cloaks dusty, boots worn, staffs clutched like they might float away without them. Most of them look half dead from the road, but a few, just a few, have coin. You've never really understood pilgrims. Walking across half the known world to visit a relic, kiss a bone fragment, or pray beside a saint's toenail seems like an absurd way to spend one's limited time on Earth. But they do it, in droves, and where pilgrims go, money follows. Not much, but enough. You stake out your usual spot, miraculously unclaimed, and lay out your goods. 2 loaves, 3 small apples, and a wedge of cheese that's holding together by sheer force of will. You try not to breathe too close to it. Then you begin. Bread for the road, apples to bless your belly, cheese to test your faith. You get a few looks. One young man in a wide-brimmed hat stops and buys an apple. He's quiet, eyes downcast, the way most pilgrims are. You don't ask his story. They all have one, and most are too heavy for the price of fruit. Next, a woman in sandals held together by string approaches. She holds out a coin and asks, "Is it blessed?" You blink. "The bread?" She nods. "It is now," you say, then mutter something vaguely Latinish and hand it over. She looks relieved and walks away munching it like it's sacred manna. Tilda appears beside you without warning, smelling of sage and sarcasm. "You doing holy bakery now?" You smirk. "Miraculous rising and questionable yeast." She laughs and hands you a string of tiny wooden crosses. Sell those to the next wide-eyed pilgrim. Tell them they're relics. St. Ambrose's toothpicks or something. You eye the string. They're crude, whittled quickly, clearly fake. But in this market, so is most of what's sold. What's the cut? 2 for you, 3 for me. Fine. Just like that, you're now in the relic business. You display the crosses on the side of your board like a discount shrine. A child buys one, convinced it will protect his father's knees. You don't argue. You pocket the coin. Another pilgrim approaches, a man with a limp and a voice like gravel. He buys cheese and tells you he's walking to Compostela. You don't even know where that is. You nod and offer him a second wedge on discount. He thanks you like you saved his soul. You're not used to thanks. You like it. There's a kind of softness to the pilgrims that sets them apart from your usual customers. They're not aggressive, not loud, not in a hurry. It makes them easy marks for street scams, of course. And you see plenty of that happening around you. A woman selling Tears of the Virgin in little glass beads. A boy claims his goat touched a relic and is now slightly blessed. Someone's walking around selling actual rocks for 2 copper apiece. No lie, just rocks. You've considered worse. There's a scholarly argument, one you half remember from a drunk monk, that pilgrims created a secondary economy wherever they stopped. They shifted the flow of goods, disrupted local trade, made certain corners of the city richer for a day or two, but they also created tension. They got robbed, they spread stories. Sometimes they brought diseases. Today, though, they bring you customers. By midday, you've sold nearly everything. The bread is gone. 2 of the crosses have been bought by a couple claiming they're getting married in the next village. You hope the fake relics bless them into tolerance, if not joy. You sit on your crate and sip some water. Your throat hurts from shouting, but your pouch is heavier than usual. Then something strange happens. A pilgrim stops. Middle-aged, quiet, dressed in grey with a scallop shell pinned to her shoulder. She doesn't look at your goods. She just looks at you. "You've been here a long time," she says. You blink. "I've been here. Enough. I remember your stall from 3 years ago. You sold me bread then too." You pause. "Did you like it?" "It was stale." You both laugh. She reaches into her pouch and pulls out a small coin, silver, smooth, foreign. "I'm not coming back this way. You should have this." You shake your head. "I didn't earn it." You earned it the first time, and the second, and today. She walks off before you can argue further. You stare at the coin like it might explode. A rare pilgrim gift. Something not just spent, but given. You tuck it deep into your pouch and don't tell anyone. By late afternoon, the pilgrims begin to leave, one by one. Some vanish into alleyways toward chapels and shrines. Others head back toward the city gates. The market slowly returns to normal. Louder, harsher, hungrier. You pack your board. The cheese is gone. The apples are bruised. But your soul feels, if not lighter, then less heavy. You walk home past a group of children pretending to be pilgrims, staffs and cloaks made of sticks and blankets. They chant nonsense prayers and bless each other with handfuls of dirt. You smile. Back in your room, you place the foreign coin on your windowsill, next to your bit of lace and the carved horse, A growing shrine of strange, small kindnesses. You've never been on a pilgrimage, but somehow every day you feel like you're on one anyway. You wake up shivering. It's not dramatic. There's no snowstorm battering the walls or ice on your blanket. Not that you really have a blanket, just a sheet that used to be burlap and now functions mostly as a damp suggestion of warmth. But the cold has finally crept in, subtle and patient, settling into your bones like a squatter that refuses to leave. Your breath fogs in front of you as you sit up. The pigs beneath your room grunt and shuffle, even they quieter than usual, too cold to care. Winter has arrived. Not officially, maybe, but it's here all the same. You reach for your boots, which are stiff, half-frozen, and still wet from yesterday's slush. You force them on anyway. One has a hole near the toe, the other squeaks when you walk. Together, they make a sound that announces you like a sad parade. Your coat's the same one you've had since before the last famine. It's wool, technically, or was. Now it's more whole than fabric, and the inside lining has come loose, so it wraps around your arm like a snake every time you move. You consider fixing it. Then you remember, needles cost money. You gather your board and your goods, 2 loaves, 1 hard, 1 harder, and a single apple with a dent so deep it looks punched. You've also managed to find a few sticks of kindling and a handful of dried herbs you've tied into little bundles. Not to eat, to burn. That's the real trade now. People don't want food in winter. They want warmth. The square is quiet when you arrive, your breath visible, your fingers already numb. A few vendors are setting up slowly, most of them wrapped in every layer they own. A boy next to you lights a tiny brazier and sets a pot of something on it, stew or glue, it's hard to tell. You envy the heat, not the smell. You claim your usual spot, the corner near the cracked statue of St. Linus, who, according to local tradition, once saved the town from freezing to death by striking a rock and producing hot soup. Probably apocryphal, still. It's a comforting story on a morning like this. You set your goods out. Then you set out your real stock. The kindling, the herb bundles, and your newest sign scratched into wood with a nail. Fire bundles, hot and holy. You shout into the cold. Bread, apples, light your fire, warm your bones, maybe bless your house, no guarantees. A man passes, stops, sniffs. What herbs? Lavender, sage, a hint of rosemary. He squints. For healing? For smoke that smells better than your neighbour's stew? He shrugs and pays. You hand over a bundle and mentally bless it with all the fake religious conviction you can muster. By mid-morning your fingers are stiff and your toes are numb. You switch hands every few minutes to keep the blood flowing. The cold doesn't just bite, it gnaws, slowly, with indifference. You remember last winter when the snow came early and 3 vendors froze in their sleep. One of them had been selling candles. Irony never sleeps, even when the people do. A customer buys your apple, says it reminds him of autumn. You don't ask what autumn was like for him. For you, it was soggy, muddy, and full of bruised fruit. Another man buys a fire bundle and says, "My wife says these are sinful." You nod. Tell her it's blessed by St. Linus. She doesn't believe in saints. Tell her it's blessed by the soup ghost. He laughs and walks away smiling. Then, around noon, a miracle. A baker's assistant walks by and offers you half a meat pie in exchange for a stick of wood. You agree without blinking. The pie is cold, crumbly, and glorious. You eat it slowly, savouring every bit of meat-like substance, trying not to wonder what animal it was originally. You warm your hands over the small candle stub Tilda lent you this morning. She's not selling today. She said she'd rather sleep through the cold than try to outshout frostbite. Smart woman, smarter than you. There's a historical theory that medieval winter markets became more than just places of trade. They were survival hubs, places where people huddled near braziers, shared rumours, and watched each other for signs of frostbite. Some cities even allowed vendors to sell indoors during the coldest months, if space allowed. Your city is not one of those. You hear a scream near the butcher's stall. Not pain, surprise. A man's cart has collapsed, the wheels frozen brittle, and now there's meat scattered everywhere. The dogs are having a feast, the guards laugh. No one helps. You sell another herb bundle to a woman who looks like she hasn't slept in days. She says she'll burn it in her son's room. He has the chill. You nod. That could mean anything. Cold, fever, or death waiting politely in the hallway. A boy offers to trade you a rock for a slice of bread. You tell him the bread costs more than his future. He offers you a wooden whistle instead. You take it. He eats with one hand and plays a tune with the other. By mid-afternoon your fire bundles are nearly gone. The bread's sold, only a few twigs remain, and your fingers feel like they're made of glass. You pull your coat tighter and hum a tune the whistle boy played. Then the snow starts. Not heavy, not yet, just little flakes floating like ash. The crowd thins immediately. The air feels sharper. You pack your board with slow, trembling hands. On your way home, you pass 2 vendors huddled around a fire made of old crates. One of them waves you over. You stand close just long enough to feel your fingers again. Then you walk on. Back in your room, you dump your coins onto the mat, 6 coppers, a button, and the whistle. You stare at the whistle, then you blow it. A high, warbly note fills the room. The pigs grunt in protest. You smile, you're freezing, and you're exhausted. But you made it. Winter came, and you stayed standing. You're half asleep when the banging starts. 3 hard knocks on the wood frame of your door, followed by a 4th, less rhythmic, more like someone slammed their shoulder into it. You jolt upright, your mat crinkling beneath you, your heart trying to evacuate through your ribs. You fumble for your coat, breath visible in the dark, and shuffle to the door on feet still sore from yesterday's cold. "Open up!" someone barks. You open it just a crack. It's the city watch. 2 of them. One you vaguely recognise, the one with the crooked teeth and breath like fermented goat. The other's new, younger, meaner looking. He pushes the door open further with his foot and snorts at your living conditions. "Official notice," says the first. "You've been summoned." "Summoned," you repeat because your brain's still booting up. He hands you a piece of parchment, stamped with the city's crude seal. The words are official. The ink smudged. You stare at it, blinking. It's not a fine, not an arrest, but a request. To appear before the Merchant Council, it says, "Now you're fully awake." This doesn't happen. Not to people like you. The Merchant Council is for the guildmasters, the big stall owners, the ones who sell spice, silk, and anything that doesn't come in bruised shades of brown. You're not even licensed. You barely count as a person when it comes to taxes. And yet here it is, a summons, in writing, with a time, today. The guards leave. You dress in a rush. Try to scrub your face with the corner of a cloth that smells vaguely like mildew and cheese. You look at your reflection in the water bucket and decide the dirt gives you character. The Merchant Council chambers are located in the upper part of the city, near the cathedral, where the cobblestones are smoother and the rats wear little velvet capes. You've never been up this far. The guards let you through with a smirk, like they're waiting for you to turn around and bolt. Inside, it's colder than outside. Big stone hall, high ceilings, an awful echo. 10 men and women sit behind a long table, dressed in wool cloaks and smugness. Most of them are chewing something. Almonds, dried cherries, privilege. A clerk reads your name. You stand in the middle of the room under their stares, feeling smaller than ever. Someone coughs. "Street vendor, are you?" one man asks, voice like mouldy parchment. You nod. "We've had complaints." You blink. "About me?" He raises an eyebrow, as if offended by your tone. "About your selling, your positioning, your volume." You stifle a laugh. "Volume? That's rich." A woman at the table sighs. "You've been active without a licence for, what is it now, 6 years?" "7, you say before you can stop yourself. A murmur runs along the table. One man snorts. "Well, he's at least honest." Another shuffles his notes. "Still, we can't allow unlicensed selling. It disrupts the order of the market, causes conflict, underprices legitimate vendors." Legitimate vendors, that's a phrase. You think about Tilda, about the turnip boy, about the widow who sells thread from her apron. None of them are licensed. Most of them wouldn't be if they lived to 100. "You're summoning me to tell me I'm poor?" you ask. Silence. Then the woman speaks again. "We're offering you a choice." This is new. "You may continue selling," she says slowly, "but only under the authority of the Cloth Guild." Your stomach tightens. That's the catch. The Cloth Guild has been trying to monopolise the square for years. They want every vendor, especially small ones, to operate under their pricing, their rules, their taxes. Or, the woman continues, you may face removal. Meaning, get out, or we'll take your board, your bread, and possibly your teeth. You think fast. Historically, this happened a lot. Street vendors were targeted by guilds trying to control trade. It wasn't about legality. It was about power. The The guilds couldn't stand competition from people who sold the same goods at cheaper prices with better jokes. I accept, you say. They all nod, satisfied. Then you add, but I want a badge. They look confused. A badge, you repeat. Something to show I'm part of your fancy system. Something customers can see, something shiny. They confer, whisper. One of them shrugs. Fine, the woman says. You'll receive a ribbon. Red, you say. More confusion. It looks better with my board. They think you're joking, but they agree. And just like that, you leave the chambers with a piece of red ribbon and a new status. Legal, or at least legal adjacent. The walk back to your side of the city feels surreal. You pass people who look at you the same as they did yesterday. But now there's this ribbon in your hand, this symbol of compromise. It feels like a win, but also like a leash. Tilda's waiting for you in the square. Well, she asks. You hold up the ribbon. She squints. That a victory or a bribe? Both, you say. She grins. You gonna wear it? You tie it to your board, loud and red and ridiculous. You set up shop and start shouting. Bread, apples, now with official approval from people you've never met. It works. People stop. Some ask about the ribbon. Some don't care. But they buy. Later that day, a guard walks by, sees the ribbon, nods, walks on. You didn't sell your soul. You sold your silence, but not your voice. Not yet. You get your first bribe 2 days later. It's subtle. The man doesn't announce it with fanfare or offer it like a villain in a play. He just walks up, smiles like someone who's been watching you too long, and slides a cloth-wrapped bundle onto the edge of your board. You glance down, dried meat. Good stuff too, seasoned, not salty. Enough to feed you for 2 days if you ration it like someone with a functioning sense of the future. You look up. What's this? He shrugs, smiling still. A gift. You raise an eyebrow. Nobody gifts a street vendor anything. What do you want? He smiles wider. Just a little help. Let me know when the watch is doing surprise checks. Let me know if anyone's asking questions about what I sell. You look to the left. He's not set up yet, but you've seen his cart before. Dried herbs, oils, powders, some of it's legit, some of it's fantasy. A few items, you've heard rumours. Potions that make people see spirits, or run faster than hounds, or forget their debts. That last one might actually work, if you hit the debtor with the bottle. You take the meat, not because you agree, but because you're starving. Fine, you say, but don't make it obvious. He winks and walks off. You wrap the meat carefully and hide it in your sack. It's the best payment you've had in weeks, and it feels like swallowing rocks. Because now you're not just selling bread and apples, you're part of something else. You don't know what yet. But it's big, and it smells worse than the pigsty behind your room. The market feels different today. Edgy. Maybe it's the cold, maybe the red ribbon tied to your board that now flaps in the wind like a flag announcing, "Hello, I've been noticed." Either way, people are watching you more closely. Some with curiosity, some with suspicion. Tilda doesn't say anything when she arrives. She just nods at the ribbon and shakes her head like she's disappointed in your haircut. You want to explain, but you don't. She knows the game. The day wears on. You sell steadily, but not joyfully. 1 loaf, 2 apples, one of the little fire bundles you've started branding as blessing sticks. That name seems to help. Language is half the trade. Then a second bribe comes. This time it's a pair of gloves, leather. Better than the cracked pair you've been nursing for weeks. A woman, tall, older, eyes like frostbite. She doesn't even smile. I hear you know what's happening in this square, she says. You shrug. Sometimes. She hands over the gloves. Then keep your ears open for who's skimming coin from the bread weights. You hear something, you find me. Ask for lever. She walks off. You stare at the gloves. They're soft, clean, unworn. Rich people gloves. You put them on, they fit. There's a historical idea that medieval markets were self-regulating, kept honest by a public shaming, fines and shared standards. That's optimistic. In your corner of the city, justice works like mould, slow, uneven, and mostly growing in the dark. You now have 2 bribes and no clear idea what side you're on. It feels like balancing on a plank above a pig pit. 1 wrong step and you're a squealing mess. Midday hits. A priest walks through the square, swinging incense and muttering a blessing. You nod to him. He doesn't nod back. But someone buys bread right after, like you've been spiritually approved. You see the watch circle the cart that gave you the meat. You consider warning the man. You don't. Not yet. Instead, you shift your board a little. casually wave down a customer, and try to act like the guy who just sells food. Just bread, just apples. A third bribe shows up before you can finish chewing your lunch. This one is coin. 2 silver pieces, clinking softly in a cloth pouch. Left by a kid, maybe 10 years old, who hands it to you like it's a regular payment. "From the man with the dogs," he whispers, and runs off. The man with the dogs. You've seen him. Big, loud, missing 3 fingers on his left hand. Always has 2 hounds at his side, and talks like every sentence is a fight. You've heard he smuggles, not goods, people. The coins are heavy, tempting. You could buy a new shirt, a hot meal, pay the innkeeper before he starts threatening again. But it's too much, too fast, and you keep the pouch, but you don't spend it. Not yet. As the day winds down, you sit on your crate and stare at your board. Your hands now hidden in sleek leather gloves, your sack holding meat, silver, secrets. You didn't sign up for this. But the thing is, no one ever does. That's how it starts. 1 gift, 1 favour, 1 nod. Then the game begins. A scholarly debate you once overheard from a drunk merchant claimed that the real rulers of any medieval city weren't the mayors or nobles, but the people who knew things. The gossip brokers, the watchers, the informants, the ones who sat in the mud and smiled politely while listening to everyone's business. You're not sure you want to be one of them, but it seems like you already are. You pack your board, tie up your sack, and walk home slower than usual, eyes scanning every alley. Back in your room, you line up the bribes, meat, gloves, silver. You stare at them for a long time. Then you eat half the meat, fold the gloves, and bury the coins beneath the mat. Tomorrow you'll decide. For now, you've survived another day, even if the world around you just got 10 shades darker. You don't get to choose what kind of day it's going to be. You just wake up, sniff the air, and guess. If it smells like smoke and boiled cabbage, maybe it'll be peaceful. If it smells like blood and someone yelling about taxes before sunrise, maybe just crawl back under your sack blanket and call it a loss. Today the air smells like wet metal and something burned. You crack the shutters and see why. Smoke on the far side of the square. Not chimney smoke. Not cooking smoke. Something bigger. There's no panic, no screaming, but people are out early. Walking, watching, whispering. You chew a dry chunk of bread as you get dressed, every bite tasting more like nervous curiosity than food. You pass 4 people on your way to the market. 2 of them nod at you like you're someone they expect to know something. The third asks, "Did you hear about the fire?" You nod, though you haven't. Not really. Just enough to pretend. You get the rest of the story as you walk. The stall went up overnight. One of the newer ones. No one hurt, nothing important lost. That's the word being passed around anyway. But there's always a layer beneath. Tilda's already in the square when you arrive, though she's not selling. She's just standing there, arms crossed, face unreadable. You follow her gaze to a blackened patch near the north end. Someone's laid down fresh straw over the worst of it, but the scorch marks are still visible, and the smell? Acrid. Like someone tried to torch a barn full of secrets. "Someone mad at the Spice Man," she mutters. "His cart was the one hit." You blink. The Spice Man, the one who gave you dried meat a few days back. Your first bribe, the one who wanted you to whisper when the watch came sniffing. Tilda watches you. You talk to him? Not much, you lie. She gives you a look that could strip bark from a tree, but she doesn't press. You find your usual spot, untouched by fire, but definitely touched by tension. You set up your board and your wares without your usual rhythm. Bread, 1 loaf, apples 2, a few of the fire bundles now renamed bless burners because a local friar said that sounded less heretical. You didn't ask what heretical means, you just nodded and added it to your pitch. You shout, loud enough to distract yourself, loud enough to cut through the murmurs. Warm bread, clean apples, and smoke that keeps the ghosts away. A few regulars buy. One trades a chicken foot for a bundle, another gives you a single copper and a whisper. Heard there's more coming. You don't ask what, or who, you just nod. Mid-morning brings a surprise. The merchant council sends a runner, some kid in a livery too clean for this side of town. He walks straight to your stall and hands you a sealed message. Then he turns and leaves without a word. You stare at the scroll, open it, and find an invitation. You are hereby requested to assist in the adjudication of market disputes as a neutral observer. You laugh, out loud. It's a sound with no humour in it. They want you to be a witness, because apparently You've become neutral enough to watch everyone, but not important enough to threaten anyone. Tilda strolls by and eyes the parchment. They want you to be a snitch? You hold it up. An official snitch. Fancy. She walks away whistling. You fold the paper, tuck it into your sack, and feel the weight of it settle somewhere behind your ribs. The rest of the day moves like honey through mud, slow, cold, sticky with tension. A man walks by and knocks your board slightly off balance. Not an accident, a message. You recognise him, one of the dogman's associates. You pretend not to notice. Rebalance your bread like nothing happened. Sell an apple. Smile. You're officially a middleman now, between the market and the council, between the buyers and the liars, between people with knives in their boots and judges in their towers. Another scholarly debate. Were medieval street vendors victims of the system or subtle masters of it? People who bent under pressure, or people who learned how to redirect it? The answer is probably yes. You remember your second bribe, the gloves. You're wearing them now. They feel tighter. You remember the silver coins, still buried under your mat. You remember the Spice Man, now without a cart. Late in the day, the watch stops by. Real watch, not the lazy kind. One of them asks you what you saw last night. You say, "I sleep like the dead." He grunts and moves on. You pack your board slowly. Your coin pouch is light today, but your head, full. As you pass the scorched spot on your way home, you stop, just for a second. There's a small wooden token nailed to the post where the Spice Man's sign used to hang, painted black, unmarked. You've seen one before, only once. The Dogman's people use it when someone forgets a deal. You walk faster. Back in your room, you lock the door. Not that it'll stop anyone, but it makes you feel like it might. You dig up the silver coins and stare at them. Then you tuck them under the floorboard, next to the lace, the pilgrim coin, the carved horse, your little shrine of survival. You lie on your mat. You think about the invitation. You think about the fire. And for the first time in months, you're not sure you want to sell tomorrow, but you will. Because that's what you do, even when the square is burning. You're sitting on your board before sunrise, staring at the empty square like it's about to confess something. The frost hasn't melted yet, and every breath you take feels like it's trying to stab you from the inside. No one else is here. Not yet. Not even the rats who've taken the morning off, apparently. You don't blame them. You weren't going to come today. You said it to yourself last night, out loud even. Tomorrow I don't show up. You said it like a promise, like someone who still believes they're in control of their own life. But here you are. Again. Same stall, same cracked board, same sore feet and same sinking feeling. Because the summons wasn't a request. It was a warning. You think about it again now, rolling it over in your mind like a coin you're not sure is real. Assist in market adjudication. The words are so polished they practically slip out of your memory, but the meaning sticks. The Merchant Council wants you to watch, to listen, maybe to testify, maybe to rat, maybe just to stand there like a piece of furniture while they decide whose life gets burned down next. You don't want to be part of it, but you don't want to be outside of it either. Because you saw what happened to the Spice Man, and you know who nailed that black token to the stall beam. The square begins to stir around you, slowly, like a monster with a hangover. Vendors shuffle in, wrapped in scarves and suspicion. Someone starts a fire near the statue of St. Linus. Someone else sells hot wine from a dented tin cup. You don't drink any, not yet. Not with your head already pounding from too many decisions and not enough sleep. Tilda arrives with no goods, no board, just a bundle under her arm, and a look that says, "I told you this was coming." She walks past you without a word and disappears behind a curtain of hanging linens that mark the edge of the textile corner. That's where deals happen now. Quiet ones. The kind people whisper about but never explain. You try to shout. Your voice cracks on the first pitch. You clear your throat and try again. Bread, apples, fire sticks, only slightly cursed and only moderately stale. It works. A little. People laugh. A child buys an apple and bites into it like it owes him money. An old man trades you a spool of thread for a bundle of sage. You pocket it without thinking. Thread's worth more than herbs this week. Around noon, a young man you've never seen before walks straight to your board and asks, "Are you the one who watches?" It's not a question you want to hear. You pause. "I sell bread." He tilts his head. "But you also watch." You say nothing. He sets a folded cloth on your board and walks away. You wait a moment before unfolding it. Inside, dried rose petals. Dozens of them. No note. Just the scent. Faint, lovely, and completely wrong for this time of year. You don't know what it means, but someone does. Later, a council runner appears. Same boy as before, same blank face. He hands you another parchment, this one sealed in red wax and stamped not with the city crest, but the guild mark for the cloth merchants. You open it and read silently. Tomorrow, testimony requested. Dispute over weight tampering. You are listed as witness. Failure to appear will be noted. You fold it neatly and tuck it away. Your hands don't shake. You're not sure if that's strength or numbness. You look up and realise the dogman is watching you from across the square, just standing there, one hound at his side, no smile, no nod, no nothing. You sell the rest of your bread in a daze. You trade the last apple for a handful of dried beans and a lucky button. You don't believe in luck, but you pocket the button anyway. It's smooth, warm from someone's palm. Then someone else approaches your stall. It's Lever. You haven't seen her since the glove deal. She looks the same, sharp, cold, too still. She doesn't speak until she's close enough to touch your board. You heard who's being accused? You shake your head. Someone from the fish row. Claims the weights are rigged. Claims a bread vendor saw it. She looks at you like she already knows the answer. You don't speak. Don't breathe. She leaves. You think about the fish row, about the vendors you know, the ones who have lent you a knife, given you a heel of crust, watched your board when you ran to the latrine. One of them is about to be crushed by the council. And your name is on the paper, not because you said anything, but because someone needs a witness. And you're convenient. There's a fringe theory, one you overheard from a travelling juggler who read too much, that the city itself is alive, that it watches, listens, adapts, that it uses people the way a tree uses wind, to scatter its seeds and shift its shape. You believe it now. You're not a person anymore. You're a lever, a hinge, a way to tilt the scales without ever laying a hand on them. You pack your boards slowly. The day's almost over, the crowd's thinning. The smoke from the fish fires drifts across the square and stings your eyes. Back in your room, you lay out your earnings, a few coins, a button, the petals. You add the parchment to your growing pile, you hide the petals under your mat, though you're not sure why. You sit, you stare, and for the first time since you started this life, you wonder if it's going to end not from hunger, or cold, or illness, but from being noticed. You are safer when no one knew your name. You don't sleep. You lie down, sure. You close your eyes, but the sleep part never really shows up. Instead, you just float there, half in, half out, while your mind runs in tight circles like a caged dog. You replay every word from the summons, every stare in the square, every gift, every bribe, every unspoken threat tucked inside an otherwise polite nod. When dawn finally scrapes its grey nails across your window, you're already dressed. You chew a bite of old bread, more for the illusion of normalcy than any real nourishment. You consider skipping the market day, just showing up at the council chambers like they asked. But no, too obvious, too guilty. You go through the motions: board, sack, cracked loaf, a single bruised apple, a tiny paper-wrapped bundle of mint, mostly crushed, but still smells nice if you squint your nose at it just right. The square is unusually quiet. Even the pigeons seem to have taken the morning off. The regulars are slow to arrive, and the few who do keep their heads low, their voices lower. You've seen this silence before, you just haven't been the cause of it. Tilda appears mid-morning, not with goods, but with a cup of something steaming and sharp. She sets it down on your board and says, "For your execution." You blink. She grins, joking. You take the cup and sip. It burns. You love it. "I hear it's the fish boy," she says. You nod. "Figures," she mutters. "He talks too much." You say nothing, because she's not wrong, but she's also not right. The fish boy, Callan, you think his name is, does talk too much. Always has. But he also shared his stall shade during that blistering summer, gave you a tin cup when you broke yours, and once punched a man in the ear for calling you filth. And now the council's got his name in their jaws, and yours. Because that's how this works. You aren't called to testify. You're called to confirm. You've already been cast. Today you either say your line, or the curtain falls on both of you. You manage to sell one loaf by noon. A pilgrim, of course, always a pilgrim, he thanks you with the kind of sincerity that feels like a confession. You envy his clarity. When the bell chimes the hour, you pack up. You walk the high road this time, literally. Through the cleaner streets, past the shops that have doors instead of curtains, windows instead of shutters. The guards at the chamber gate don't stop you. They're used to your face now. Inside, it's cold, always cold. Same long table, same chairs, same council members, dressed like justice and smelling like boiled linen. A clerk calls your name, you step into the circle. Callan's already there. He looks like someone dragged him through a hedge backward, hair matted, one eye slightly swollen. He gives you a look, not pleading, not angry, just there, like he already knows what's coming. The councilwoman with the thin lips clears her throat. You've been named a witness in this matter. You nod. She gestures toward her McCallan. This vendor has been accused of tampering with scales, specifically of weighting them with iron washers hidden beneath the meat board. You blink. That's new, that's specific. She continues. A merchant observed this, and a representative of the Spice Guild reported it 3 days ago. 3 days ago. Right after the fire. Right after the council started cracking down. They need someone to blame. We've heard whispers, she says. We'd like confirmation. Everyone turns to you. You take a breath, say nothing, another breath, then slowly you open your mouth. I've never seen Callan cheat the weight. Silence. He swears at customers. He sells fish that sometimes smells like a sin, but he doesn't cheat. The silence stretches, then someone coughs. One of the councilmen leans forward. You're sure? I know what cheating looks like. I've watched it. I've been offered to keep quiet about it, but not from him. It hangs in the air like smoke. Callan doesn't move. The woman sighs. Very well. You're dismissed. Just like that. Like someone throwing a crust out the window. Callan's not dismissed. He stays. You catch a glance of the guards shifting behind him. You're halfway to the door when he mutters, "Thank you." You don't answer. You just walk back to the square, back to the cold, back to the place where you belong. That afternoon you sell nothing. Doesn't matter. No one expects you to. They saw you walk to the council. They saw you come back. The ribbon's still on your board, but now it looks more like a warning than a badge, and Tilda sits beside you. You really told them? You nod. She hands you a fresh apple. You don't ask where she got it. You just eat. There's a scholarly argument, a rare one, that says street vendors shaped cities more than kings ever did. Not with armies, not with laws, but with eyes, with memory, with presence, because cities change through movement, through the rhythm of bodies, through people who show up every day despite the cold, despite the rules, despite the fear. You understand that now. You're not just surviving anymore. You're seen. It's terrifying and it's power. That night, back in your room, you count your coins, less than usual, but that's not what matters. You dig up the petals, you place them in a tin cup, you light them. The smoke smells like spring. You sit by the window and breathe. And for the first time since this all began, you think, maybe the market doesn't have to crush you. Maybe you've learned how to bend. Maybe next time you choose the fire. You don't go to the market the next morning. You stay in your room, wrapped in every layer you own, watching the frost climb your window like ivy made of ice. The pigs grumble below you. Someone's arguing in the street. Business as usual. But you stay put. Not because you're finished, because you're finally starting. You've survived another winter, another council threat, another fire. You've sold everything from bread to lies, apples to whispered warnings. You've seen the market bare and brutal, loud and holy, cursed and kind. You've shouted yourself hoarse, you've bartered your pride, you've stood when others burned, and now you rest, because even survivors need a morning off. You sip weak broth and stare at the ribbon tied to your board in the corner. Red, frayed, and fluctuating even when there's no wind. It doesn't mean what they wanted it to mean. Not anymore. It's yours now, like your board, like your name, like your voice, and you hear distant laughter. Maybe Tilda's already out there selling her fake relics and blessing bundles. Maybe the fish boy's back, yelling at pigeons and trying to look innocent. Maybe the council is still plotting in their stone fortress, convincing themselves the city runs on rules instead of people. But you know better. The city runs on noise, on stubbornness, on bread. And people like you, so you'll return tomorrow or the day after. You'll sell, you'll shout, you'll survive. And someday when they write songs about kings and knights and victories, maybe someone will hum a tune about the one who sold apples while the city burned.